The ballroom doors exploded open at exactly 9:47 p.m., and every billionaire in Manhattan stopped breathing. Vivien Cross, the woman they'd all watched shatter 6 months ago, the fragile wife publicly destroyed by Ethan Cole and erased from their world, walked in wearing black silk and something far more dangerous than diamonds. She wasn't alone. Beside her stood Adrian Volkov, the kind of man whose name politicians refused to say out loud, whose presence made federal prosecutors nervous, whose cold eyes had watched empires collapse without blinking once. Ethan's champagne glass trembled in his hand, because the woman he'd buried alive had just walked back into his life carrying enough evidence to destroy everything he'd built. If you want to see how far this story travels, drop a comment with your city below. And don't forget to hit that like button. This is going to be a long night. 6 months earlier, Vivien Cole had stood on the terrace of the Plaza Hotel trying to remember how to breathe. The charity gala roared behind her, 300 voices tangled with orchestra strings and the clink of crystal against gold-rimmed plates. But out here, the October wind cut through her Valentino gown like it knew exactly where her ribs were broken. She gripped the railing hard enough that her knuckles went white, nails digging crescents into her palms, because if she let go, she wasn't sure what would happen. Maybe she'd float away. Maybe she'd fall. Maybe she'd finally do what everyone at that gala secretly expected her to do. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. Again. She didn't look. She already knew what it said. "Where are you?" people are asking. "Don't embarrass me tonight." Ethan's texts always sounded like that. Calm on the surface. Violence underneath. "Mrs. Cole!" Vivien turned too fast, champagne sloshing over her wrist. A young reporter stood 3 feet away holding a recorder like a weapon, eyes bright with the kind of hunger that came from smelling blood in the water. "Is it true your husband's filing for divorce?" The question punched through her chest. No, that's not. Sources say you've been hospitalized twice this year for psychiatric evaluation. Can you comment?" The terrace tilted. Vivien's throat closed. "I need you to leave." "Mrs. Cole, there are rumors about your husband's financial dealings with offshore accounts." I said leave. But the reporter didn't move, just clicked the recorder closer. And Vivien realized with sick clarity that this woman wasn't here to ask questions. She was here to watch Vivien break. Again. In public. On record. "Get the fuck away from her." The voice came from behind, low and precise as a blade between ribs. Vivien spun. A man stood in the terrace doorway. Tall, maybe 40, wearing a charcoal suit that fit too perfectly to be anything but custom. Dark hair swept back from a face that looked carved rather than born, but it was his eyes that stopped her, pale gray, entirely empty of anything resembling warmth. The reporter's face went white. "Mr. Volkov, I wasn't aware you were attending. You're leaving," Adrian Volkov said. Not a threat, a statement of fact. The reporter left. Vivien watched her disappear back into the gala, then turned to the stranger who'd just made a journalist flee like she'd seen a ghost. "Thank you," she managed. Her voice sounded thin. Breakable. I don't know who you are, but you're welcome." He didn't move closer, didn't smile, just studied her with the kind of attention that made her feel like he was cataloging every crack in her foundation. "Your husband is looking for you." Something in Vivien's chest went cold. "How do you know that?" "Because he sent 3 assistants to search the building in the last 10 minutes, and one of them just checked this terrace." Adrian tilted his head slightly. "You should go back inside." "I can't." The words fell out before she could stop them. Adrian's expression didn't change. "Why not?" "Because if I go back in there, I'm going to break something." Vivien's laugh came out jagged. "A glass, a mirror, my own face. I don't know. But something's going to break and everyone's going to watch. And tomorrow morning it'll be on page 6 with a headline about how Ethan Cole's unstable wife finally lost it completely." She waited for him to tell her she was being dramatic, hysterical, crazy. Instead he said, "Then don't go back inside." Vivien stared at him. "What?" "Leave," Adrian said simply. "Walk out. Don't explain. Don't apologize. Just go." "I can't just. People will talk." "They're already talking." His eyes flicked toward the ballroom, where Vivien could see Ethan through the glass doors, scanning the crowd with that expression he wore when things weren't going according to plan. The only question is whether you let them watch you break or whether you leave before they get the chance. Vivien's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs. Who are you? Someone who knows what it looks like when a person's been backed into a corner. Adrian pulled a card from his jacket pocket and held it out. Plain black. No name, just a phone number embossed in silver. If you need help leaving, call that number. Leaving the gala? Leaving everything. The card felt heavy in her palm. Vivien looked up at him, trying to find the angle, the catch, the reason a stranger would offer her an escape route in the middle of a Manhattan charity event. But Adrian Volkov's face gave her nothing. Why would you help me? I'm not helping you, he said. I'm giving you a choice. Then he walked back into the gala and disappeared into the crowd like he'd never been there at all. Vivien stood alone on the terrace, wind pulling at her hair, the city glittering below her like a galaxy made of broken promises. She looked down at the card in her hand, turned it over. Nothing on the back. Her phone buzzed again. Vivien. Now. She closed her eyes, and she made a choice. The driver didn't ask questions when Vivien slid into the back of the town car and said, "Drive." He just pulled away from the plaza and headed south through Manhattan, lights streaming past the tinted windows in ribbons of gold and red. Vivien watched the city blur, her chest tight, hands still trembling in her lap. She'd left. Actually left. Walked out of the gala without a word, without her coat, without saying goodbye to a single person. By now, Ethan would know. By now, he'd be furious. By now, the whispers would have started. Did you see her leave? She just walked out. No explanation. I told you she wasn't stable. Poor Ethan. Vivien pressed her forehead against the cold window and tried not to cry. The car stopped in front of her brownstone in the West Village, the one Ethan had bought for her 3 years ago when he still pretended to care about making her happy. He owned it, of course. He owned everything, the house, the cars, the bank accounts. Even her clothes were technically his, purchased with his cards, hanging in closets he paid for. She was 34 years old and she owned nothing. Inside, the house felt too big and too quiet. Vivien kicked off her heels in the entryway, left them lying where they fell, and climbed the stairs to the bedroom. Her reflection caught in the hallway mirror, hollow-eyed, makeup smudged, hair falling out of its pins. She looked like someone playing dress-up in a life that didn't fit anymore. She looked like she was drowning. Her phone started ringing. Ethan's name lit up the screen, once, twice, 3 times. Vivien turned the phone off and threw it on the bed. Then she walked into the bathroom, turned on the shower as hot as it would go, and sat down on the tile floor still wearing the Valentino gown. Steam filled the room, water soaked through silk, plastering the fabric to her skin, ruining $12,000 of couture. She didn't care. She sat there until the water ran cold, until her teeth chattered, until she couldn't tell the difference between shower spray and tears anymore. When she finally dragged herself out, wrapped in a towel, she found 17 missed calls and 32 text messages waiting on her phone. Most were from Ethan, a few from his assistant, one from her former best friend Caroline asking if she was okay, in a tone that sounded more like curiosity than concern. Vivien deleted all of them. Then she pulled Adrian Volkov's card out of her clutch and stared at it until the numbers blurred. If you need help leaving, call that number. She didn't call. Not that night. But she kept the card. 3 days later, Vivien sat across from Ethan in his corner office on the 47th floor of the Cole Financial Building and listened to him explain why their marriage was over. You're not well, Vivien. His voice carried that practiced gentleness he used with skittish investors and hysterical clients. You haven't been well for a long time. I've tried to help. God knows I've tried. But after what happened at the gala, walking out without a word, humiliating both of us in front of everyone who matters, I can't keep pretending this is going to get better. Vivien sat very still. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan sprawled beneath them like a kingdom Ethan believed he ruled. I didn't humiliate you, she said quietly. I left a party. You abandoned your responsibilities. Ethan leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. You left me standing there with no explanation while 300 people watched and wondered what was wrong with my wife. What's wrong with me? Vivien repeated. Her voice stayed level, but something hot and sharp was building behind her ribs. That's the narrative you're going with? It's not a narrative, Vivien. It's a pattern. Ethan pulled a folder from his desk drawer and slid it across the polished wood. I've had my attorneys draw up divorce papers. The settlement is generous. The townhouse is yours, monthly support, full medical coverage, including psychiatric care. Vivien opened the folder, scanned the first page. Her hands went numb. You're offering me $12,000 a month. It's more than fair. We've been married for 9 years. And you haven't worked in 7, Ethan said. You have no income, no assets in your name. Frankly, Vivien, you should be grateful I'm being this generous given your recent behavior. The words landed like a fist to the throat. Vivien looked up at her husband, the man she'd met at a Columbia fundraiser when she was 25, and stupid enough to believe love meant safety. He was 46 now, graying at the temples in a way magazines called distinguished, wearing a Tom Ford suit that cost more than most people's rent. He looked at her like she was a problem he was solving. My recent behavior, Vivien said slowly. Meaning what, exactly? The hospitalizations. I had 2 miscarriages, Ethan. The medication adjustments, the canceled appointments, the increasing paranoia about my work. You told me I was imagining things when I asked about the offshore accounts. Ethan's jaw tightened. See? This is exactly what I'm talking about. You hear one rumor from some tabloid reporter and suddenly you're convinced I'm hiding something. Are you? I'm trying to help you, Vivien, but I can't do that if you won't acknowledge that you need help. The hot, sharp thing in her chest was spreading now, burning through her lungs, her throat, her skull. Vivien stood up too fast, chair scraping against marble. I'm not signing this. Ethan didn't move. Then you'll lose everything in court. My attorneys will bury you. They'll bring up the hospitalizations, the prescriptions, the incident at the Met last spring when you locked yourself in the bathroom for 2 hours. They'll paint a picture of a woman who's mentally unstable, financially dependent, and incapable of managing her own life. He paused. Is that really the fight you want? Vivien's hands were shaking again. She pressed them flat against the desk. You did this to me, she whispered. You convinced everyone I was crazy so they wouldn't believe me when I said something was wrong. Nothing is wrong except your refusal to accept reality. Ethan stood, buttoning his jacket. Sign the papers, Vivien. Take the settlement. Move on with your life. And if I don't? For the first time, something cold flickered behind Ethan's eyes. Then you'll find out exactly how much power you don't have. Gag. Vivien walked out of the Cole Financial Building into a gray November afternoon that smelled like rain and exhaust. Her vision tunneled. Her chest felt crushed. Around her, the city moved, taxis honking, tourists laughing, businessmen shouting into phones. But she couldn't hear any of it over the roar in her ears. You'll lose everything in court. She already had nothing. Mentally unstable, financially dependent, incapable. She made it 2 blocks before her knees buckled. She caught herself against a brick wall in an alley between a bodega and a dry cleaner, hand pressed to her mouth, trying not to scream. People walked past without looking. Nobody stopped. Nobody cared. She was just another broken woman in a city full of them. Her phone buzzed. Caroline. Hey babe, heard about the divorce. Let me know if you need anything, XO. The message had 17 likes already. Caroline had posted it in their group chat. They were all watching, waiting to see her fall apart, collecting the story so they could tell it at brunch. Did you hear about Vivien Cole? Completely lost it. Ethan had no choice. Vivien pulled Adrian Volkov's card out of her wallet, stared at the number. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. She dialed anyway. It rang once, twice. Then a voice, low and calm. Yes, this is Vivien Cole, she said. Her voice cracked. You gave me your card at the plaza. You said if I needed help leaving, I remember. I need help. Silence. Then, where are you? Vivien looked around the alley, gave him the cross streets. Stay there, Adrian said. I'm sending a car. Why are you helping me? The question came out desperate. I don't even know who you are. You don't need to know who I am, Adrian said. You just need to decide if you're ready to stop pretending you're fine. The line went dead. Vivien stood in the alley, phone pressed to her chest, rain starting to fall. 20 minutes later, a black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. The driver got out, opened the back door, and said, "Mr. Volkov is waiting." Vivien looked at the car, looked back at the street where her old life waited, the brownstone Ethan owned, the friends who'd already chosen sides, the narrative already being written about the unstable wife who couldn't handle pressure. She got in the car. They drove north out of Manhattan, past the Bronx, into Westchester County, where the houses grew larger and the trees thicker and the city lights faded into something quieter. Vivien didn't ask where they were going. She just watched the world scroll past, hands folded in her lap, breathing slowly through her nose. The car turned onto a private road, then through iron gates that opened silently, then up a long driveway lined with bare maples. At the end sat a house. No, an estate, all stone and glass and modern angles, lit from within like something out of an architecture magazine. The driver opened her door. "This way, Mrs. Cole." Inside, the house was warm and smelled faintly of wood smoke. Vivien followed the driver through a marble entryway into a library where floor-to-ceiling bookshelves framed a stone fireplace. Adrian Volkov stood near the window, hands in his pockets, watching the dark woods beyond the glass. He turned when she entered. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a leather chair near the fire. Vivien sat. Her legs felt like water. Adrian poured something amber into a crystal glass and handed it to her. "Drink." She drank. Scotch. Expensive. It burned going down. "Why did you call me?" Adrian asked. "Because I don't have anyone else." "That's not true. You have friends, family, resources." "My friends stopped answering my calls 3 months ago when Ethan started telling people I was unstable. My family's dead. And the only resources I have are ones my husband controls." Vivien's hands tightened around the glass. "He's divorcing me. He says if I don't sign his settlement, he'll destroy me in court. He'll take everything and make sure everyone knows I'm too crazy to deserve anything." Adrian's expression didn't change. "Is he right?" "About what? Are you unstable?" The question should have hurt. Instead, Vivien felt something loosen in her chest. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Maybe. I had 2 miscarriages this year. The second one almost killed me. I spent 3 weeks in a psychiatric facility because I couldn't stop crying, and Ethan told the doctors I was a danger to myself. When I got out, nothing felt real anymore. Food didn't taste like anything. Sleep didn't help. My own reflection looked like a stranger." She met Adrian's eyes. "So maybe I am unstable. But I wasn't always like this. I used to be someone." "Who?" "I don't remember." Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then he sat down in the chair across from hers. "Your husband is running a series of fraudulent shell corporations through offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands," he said. "He's been laundering money for a real estate development group with ties to state contracts that were awarded illegally. Federal prosecutors have been building a case for 18 months. The only reason they haven't moved yet is because they're still tracing the paper trail." Vivien's breath stopped. "How do you know that?" "Because I make it my business to know things about powerful men who believe they're untouchable." Adrian leaned forward slightly. "Your husband didn't just gaslight you about your mental health, Vivien. He gaslit you about his crimes. Every time you asked about irregularities in his accounts, every time you noticed something that didn't add up, he convinced you that you were paranoid, imagining things, too fragile to understand how business works." The room tilted. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you asked for help leaving." Adrian's eyes didn't blink. "And I'm offering you a way out that doesn't end with you broken and discredited in a courtroom." "What kind of way out?" "The kind where you walk away with enough evidence to bury him if he tries to destroy you first." Vivien's heart hammered against her ribs. "You want me to what? Spy on my own husband?" "I want you to decide whether you're going to let Ethan Cole control the rest of your life, or whether you're going to take it back." Adrian stood, walked to the fireplace, stared into the flames. "He's going to come after you, Vivien. The moment you refuse to sign those papers, he's going to weaponize every therapist's note, every prescription, every moment you broke down in front of witnesses. He's going to paint you as an unstable woman who can't be trusted. And unless you have leverage, he's going to win. And if I get you this evidence, what happens then?" Then you have options, Adrian said. You can use it to negotiate a real settlement. You can hand it to federal prosecutors and let them handle it. Or you can keep it locked away as insurance so that if Ethan ever tries to hurt you again, you can end him. Vivien set the glass down. Her hands had stopped shaking. Why do you care what happens to me? Adrian turned from the fire. For the first time, something almost human flickered across his face. Because I've seen what men like Ethan Cole do to people who trust them, he said quietly, and I'm tired of watching them win. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. The fire crackled. Vivien sat in the leather chair in a stranger's house and felt the foundations of her world shifting beneath her. If I do this, she said slowly, if I help you get evidence against Ethan, what do you get out of it? Justice, Adrian said. That's not an answer. His smile was cold and sharp as a knife. It's the only answer you're going to get. Vivien looked at him, this man whose name made journalists go pale, whose presence had cleared a terrace in seconds, whose eyes held nothing but controlled violence and something deeper she couldn't name. She should have been terrified. Instead, for the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe. Okay, she said. Okay. I'll do it. Vivien stood up. I'll get you what you need, but I have conditions. Adrian raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. First, I need somewhere to live, somewhere Ethan can't find me, somewhere his lawyers and his friends and his private investigators can't touch me. Done. Second, I need a therapist, a real one, someone who won't report back to Ethan or his attorneys. I'll arrange it. Third, Vivien's voice hardened. When this is over, when Ethan's destroyed or neutralized or whatever the fuck you're planning, I walk away clean. No debts, no obligations, no strings attached to you or anyone else. Adrian's expression didn't change. Agreed. Then we have a deal. She held out her hand. Adrian looked at it for a moment, then shook it once. His grip was firm and cold. One more thing, he said. What? This is going to hurt. Digging up evidence means reliving everything he did to you. It means going back into that world, facing people who abandoned you, pretending you're still the fragile woman they remember. It means watching Ethan lie and manipulate and gaslight you all over again, except this time you'll be recording every word. Adrian's eyes locked on hers. Are you strong enough for that? Vivien thought about the last 2 years, the miscarriages, the hospital, the night she couldn't sleep, the mornings she couldn't get out of bed, the slow, grinding erasure of everything she used to be. I don't know if I'm strong enough, she said, but I know I'm angry enough. Something like approval flickered in Adrian's eyes. Good, he said. Anger is more useful than strength. Some. The car dropped Vivien back at her brownstone just after midnight. The house was dark, silent. Ethan's keys weren't on the hall table, which meant he hadn't come home. Or he'd already moved out. Vivien climbed the stairs to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing her coat. The room smelled like his cologne, expensive, woody, suffocating. She looked around at the furniture they'd chosen together, the art they'd collected, the life they'd built. None of it was hers. She pulled out her phone. 34 new messages, most from Ethan. We need to talk. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. My attorney will be in touch tomorrow. Sign the papers, Vivien. She deleted them all. Then she opened her laptop and started downloading every financial document she could access from Ethan's shared drives. Bank statements, wire transfers, corporate filings, shell company registrations, emails between Ethan and his CFO discussing accounting adjustments and creative restructuring. Her hands didn't shake this time. By 3 a.m., she had 17 gigabytes of data saved to an encrypted external drive. By 4 a.m., she'd wiped her browser history and hidden the drive in a tampon box at the back of her bathroom cabinet. By 5 a.m., she was lying in bed staring at the ceiling, heart pounding, wondering if this was bravery or just another kind of breakdown. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Good work. Get some sleep. Vivien stared at the message. Then she turned off the phone and closed her eyes. She didn't sleep, but she smiled anyway. The war started slowly. For 3 weeks, Vivien played the role of the grieving, confused wife. She met with Ethan's attorneys and cried at the right moments. She had coffee with Caroline and let her believe the breakup was mutual. She attended therapy sessions with the psychiatrist Adrian arranged, a sharp-eyed woman named Dr. Reyes who didn't ask leading questions or prescribe pills that made Vivien's thoughts go fuzzy. And every night, she downloaded more files, more emails, more proof. Ethan grew bolder. He started bringing his new girlfriend, a 28-year-old associate from his firm named Kara, to public mats. The tabloids ate it up. Ethan Cole steps out with stunning lawyer while estranged wife remains in seclusion. Vivien's phone buzzed constantly with messages from former friends offering hollow sympathy. "I'm so sorry, babe. If you need anything," she ignored them all. Instead, she met with Adrian once a week in quiet restaurants where nobody recognized her, handing over encrypted drives and watching him review the evidence with the focused intensity of a surgeon examining an X-ray. "This is good," he said one night, scanning through a spreadsheet detailing payments to a consulting firm that didn't exist. "But we need more. We need direct communication between Ethan and the state officials who awarded the contracts." "Those emails are on his private server," Vivien said. "I don't have access anymore." "Then you'll need to get it back." "How?" Adrian looked up from the laptop. "Go to his office. Tell him you want to talk about reconciliation. He'll let his guard down. He won't believe me." "Yes, he will. Because men like Ethan always believe they're irresistible." Adrian's smile was cold. "He'll think you're crawling back because you can't survive without him. Let him think that. Then take what you need and leave." Vivien's stomach twisted. "What if he realizes what I'm doing? Then you'll find out what you're really made of." She went to Ethan's office on a Thursday afternoon in early December when the sky hung low and gray over Manhattan. His assistant, a nervous young man named Kyle, led her up to the 47th floor and left her waiting in the conference room with its wall of windows overlooking the city. Ethan kept her waiting 20 minutes. When he finally walked in, he looked surprised. "Vivien, I didn't expect to see you here." "I know." She stood smoothing her skirt. She dressed carefully, a cashmere sweater, minimal makeup, hair pulled back, soft, harmless. "I wanted to talk about everything." Ethan's expression shifted into something cautious. "Okay, let's talk." They sat across from each other at the conference table. Vivien folded her hands in her lap and made herself look smaller than she was. "I've been thinking about the settlement," she said quietly. "And I think maybe you're right. About me. About everything." Ethan leaned back in his chair. "Go on." "I'm not well, Ethan. I haven't been well for a long time. And I've been so angry at you for leaving, but maybe you're just doing what's best for both of us." She looked down at her hands. "I don't want to fight. I don't want this to get ugly. I just want to move on." She could feel him studying her, calculating. "So you'll sign the papers?" "I think so. I need time to process, to make sure I'm making the right decision." Vivien looked up, let her eyes go a little wet. "Can you give me that?" Ethan's shoulders relaxed. "Of course. Take the time you need." "Thank you." Vivien stood. "Can I use your restroom before I go?" "Sure. You know where it is?" She walked out of the conference room, down the hall, past the executive bathrooms, and straight into Ethan's private office. The door was unlocked. Inside, his computer sat on the desk, screen dark. Vivien's heart slammed against her ribs. She pulled the USB drive from her pocket, a tiny thing no bigger than her thumb, and plugged it into the computer. The screen lit up. Password protected. She typed in the password she'd used 100 times before when they were still pretending to be married. It didn't work. Fuck. She tried his birthday, his mother's name, the name of his first dog. Nothing. Behind her, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Vivien's hands started shaking. She tried one more combination, the date they'd met, backwards. The screen unlocked. The USB drive began copying files automatically, a small progress bar crawling across the screen. 30 seconds. 45. The footsteps grew louder. "Come on, come on, come on!" The door opened. Vivien yanked the USB drive out and spun around, heart exploding. Kyle stood in the doorway, holding a stack of folders. His eyes went wide. "Mrs. Cole, what are you—" "I was looking for Ethan," Vivien said quickly. "I thought he might be in here." Kyle's expression shifted into something uncomfortable. He's still in the conference room. I can take you back? No, that's okay. I actually need to go. Vivien walked past him, USB drive burning in her closed fist. Tell him I'll call later. She didn't run. She walked calmly to the elevator, pressed the button, waited while the numbers climbed. Her reflection stared back at her from the polished steel doors, pale, wide-eyed, terrified. The elevator opened. She stepped inside. The doors closed. Then her knees buckled and she collapsed against the wall, gasping. The USB drive pressed so hard into her palm it left marks. That night, Vivien sat in the safe house Adrian had arranged. A small, clean apartment in Brooklyn with locks on every door and windows that overlooked a quiet street, and watched Adrian sort through the files she'd stolen. His face stayed carefully neutral, but she saw the moment he found it. What? She asked. Adrian turned the laptop toward her. On the screen, an email chain between Ethan and a man named Richard Melrose, Deputy Commissioner of the New York State Department of Housing and Development. The subject line, contract adjustments, Q4 finalization. Vivien scanned the messages. Her hands went cold. Richard, per our discussion, the revised proposal includes the consulting fees we discussed. Wire transfer details attached. Let's keep this clean. Ethan, confirmed. Contract awarded to Apex Consulting Group pending final approval. Appreciate your continued partnership. Apex Consulting Group doesn't exist, Adrian said quietly. It's a shell company Ethan created to funnel kickbacks to Melrose in exchange for state contracts. This email is direct evidence of bribery and fraud. Vivien stared at the screen. This could put him in prison. Yes. And Melrose, too. Yes. She looked up at Adrian. What do we do with it? That depends. Adrian closed the laptop. What do you want to happen? Vivien thought about the last 9 years. The gaslighting, the manipulation, the slow, methodical destruction of everything she used to be. She thought about Ethan's face when he'd handed her the divorce papers, when he'd called her unstable, when he'd looked at her like she was nothing. I want him to feel what I felt, she said. Which is? Powerless. Adrian's eyes stayed on hers. Then we wait. For what? For the right moment. He stood, walked to the window, looked out at the Brooklyn night. Ethan thinks he's won. He thinks you're going to sign the papers and disappear quietly. Let him believe that. Let him get comfortable. Let him think he's safe. And then? Adrian turned back to her, and for the first time, Vivien saw something almost like a smile. Then we show him exactly how wrong he was. The thing about rebuilding yourself in secret is that eventually someone notices the scaffolding. For Vivien, that someone was Caroline. They ran into each other outside a coffee shop in Soho on a Wednesday morning in mid-December. The kind of gray winter day where the sky pressed down on Manhattan like a thumb against a bruise. Vivien had been careful, avoided her old haunts, changed her routines, kept her head down, but she'd needed decent coffee and made the mistake of thinking 10 a.m. on a weekday was safe. Caroline stood 3 feet away holding a latte, her Burberry coat perfectly tailored, her expression cycling rapidly through surprise, concern, and something that looked uncomfortably like pity. Vivien? Oh my God, I've been trying to reach you for weeks. Vivien's chest tightened. She forced a smile. Hey Caroline, sorry, I've been dealing with a lot. I know, babe. The divorce must be so hard. Caroline stepped closer, lowering her voice like they were sharing a secret instead of having a conversation on a public sidewalk. How are you holding up? I'm fine. You don't look fine. You look... Caroline paused, eyes scanning Vivien's face with the kind of attention that felt more invasive than caring. Have you been sleeping? Are you still seeing Dr. Morrison? Dr. Morrison was the psychiatrist Ethan had chosen, the one who'd prescribed pills that made Vivien's thoughts go soft and distant. I switched therapists, Vivien said. Caroline's eyebrows lifted. Oh? To who? Someone private. Does Ethan know? The question landed like a slap. Why would Ethan need to know who my therapist is? Vivien kept her voice level, but her grip tightened on her coffee cup hard enough that the cardboard creaked. We're getting divorced. I know, but... Caroline glanced around, then leaned in closer. Look, I'm just worried about you. Everyone is. You disappeared for weeks, you're not answering anyone's calls, and now you're seeing some mystery therapist? It's concerning, Viv. I'm handling it. Are you? Caroline's tone shifted into something sharper. Because Ethan said you've been refusing to sign the settlement papers. He said you're making this harder than it needs to be. Vivien went very still. You talked to Ethan about me? He's worried, Vivien. We all are. He's concerned you might do something to hurt yourself. The words hung in the cold air between them. Around them, the city moved. Taxis honking, tourists laughing, delivery guys shouting, but Vivien couldn't hear any of it over the roar building in her skull. He thinks I'm going to hurt myself, she repeated slowly. I mean, you have to understand how it looks. The hospitalizations, the medications, walking out of the gala like that. I left a party, Caroline. I didn't throw myself off a fucking bridge. Caroline flinched. I'm not trying to upset you. I'm trying to help. Then stop talking to my ex-husband about my mental health. He's not your ex yet, and he has a right to be concerned. He has a right? Vivien's voice cracked. He spent 2 years convincing everyone I was crazy so nobody would believe me when I said something was wrong with his business. He gaslit me through 2 miscarriages and a breakdown, and now he's using you to check up on me because he's worried I might… What? Figure out what he's actually been doing? Caroline's face went pale. What are you talking about? Forget it. No, seriously, what are you talking about? What's Ethan been doing? Vivien looked at her old friend. The woman she'd known since grad school, who'd been her maid of honor, who'd held her hand through the first miscarriage, and then slowly, quietly, stopped returning her calls when the second one happened. Caroline's expression was all wide-eyed concern and carefully maintained neutrality, the look of someone who'd already decided which version of this story she believed. You wouldn't believe me if I told you, Vivien said. Try me. Why? So you can run back to Ethan and tell him I'm having paranoid delusions again? Caroline's jaw tightened. That's not fair, isn't it? Vivien stepped closer. When was the last time you actually asked me how I was doing without already assuming you knew the answer? I'm asking now. No, you're interrogating me. There's a difference. Vivien threw her coffee in a nearby trash can. Tell Ethan I'm fine. Tell him I'm signing the papers. Tell him whatever you want. But stop pretending you're worried about me when what you're really worried about is whether I'm going to embarrass him. She walked away before Caroline could respond. Her hands didn't start shaking until she was 3 blocks away. That night, Vivien sat in the Brooklyn apartment staring at her phone while Adrian reviewed the latest batch of files she'd pulled from Ethan's private server. The apartment was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic and the occasional click of Adrian's keyboard. Caroline texted me, Vivien said. Adrian didn't look up. What did she say? That she's sorry if she upset me, that she's here if I need to talk, that she's just worried. Vivien set the phone down. She's going to tell Ethan we ran into each other. Probably. Which means he's going to know I lied about signing the papers. He already knows. Adrian closed the laptop and looked at her. Your encounter with Caroline just confirms what he's been suspecting for weeks. That you're not broken anymore. That you're planning something. Vivien's stomach twisted. Is that bad? Not necessarily. Paranoid men make mistakes. Adrian stood, walked to the small kitchen, poured 2 glasses of water. He handed one to Vivien. But it does mean we need to accelerate the timeline. Accelerate to what? The gala. Vivien stared at him. What gala? The Halverton Foundation Gala. 6 weeks from now. Manhattan's biggest charity event of the year. Every politician, billionaire, and society figure who matters will be there. Adrian sat down across from her. Including Ethan. Why would I go to that? Because you're going to walk in on my arm and show everyone that the broken woman they remember doesn't exist anymore. Vivien's breath caught. Are you insane? Ethan will be there. His new girlfriend will be there. Every person who watched me fall apart will be there. Exactly. You want me to face them all at once? I want you to reclaim the narrative. Adrian's eyes stayed level on hers. Right now, the story everyone believes is that Ethan Cole's unstable wife couldn't handle the pressure of being married to a powerful man. That story is why he thinks he can lowball you on the settlement. It's why he thinks he can threaten you with psychiatric evaluations and custody battles over children you don't even have. It's why Caroline and everyone else treats you like a fragile thing that might shatter at any moment. So walking into a gala is supposed to change that? No. Walking into a gala beside me changes it. Adrian leaned forward slightly. I don't go to charity events, Vivien. I don't attend galas or fundraisers or any public gathering where powerful people pretend to care about causes while they network and make backroom deals. Everyone in that room knows that. So when I walk in with you, when we're seen together publicly, it sends a very specific message, which is that you're not someone to be pitied anymore. You're someone to be afraid of. Vivien's pulse hammered in her throat. You're talking about using your reputation as a weapon. I'm talking about giving you leverage. Adrian's voice stayed calm, clinical. Ethan has spent months destroying your credibility. We're going to destroy his in one night. How? By making him explain to everyone in that room why his ex-wife is standing next to the most dangerous man in New York, looking completely in control of her own life. The idea was insane, reckless, exactly the kind of thing that could backfire spectacularly. Vivien found herself nodding anyway. What do I need to do? Show up, Adrian said. Look beautiful. Don't flinch when people stare. And when Ethan tries to corner you, because he will, remember that you're not the same woman he married. The preparation started immediately. Adrian hired a stylist named Margot, who showed up at the Brooklyn apartment with 6 garment bags and an expression that suggested she'd dressed dictators and didn't scare easily. She walked around Vivien in a slow circle, taking measurements with her eyes before saying, "We're not hiding anything. No pastels, no soft edges, nothing that says victim. You're going in looking like you could buy that entire gala and burn it down if you wanted to." "I don't want to burn anything down," Vivien said. Margot smiled. "That's why it'll work." They settled on black silk, a gown that moved like water and fit like armor, with a neckline that suggested confidence without performing it. When Vivien saw herself in the mirror, something inside her chest shifted. She looked like someone who'd survived something terrible and come out sharp instead of broken. She looked dangerous. "Perfect," Margot said. Over the next few weeks, Vivien fell into a routine that felt less like preparation and more like training for war. She met with Dr. Reyes 3 times a week, working through the layers of trauma and gaslighting until she could talk about Ethan without her hands shaking. She practiced walking in heels until her feet bled. She memorized talking points for conversations she hoped she'd never have to use. And every night, she sat with Adrian in the quiet apartment and went over the evidence they'd collected. The emails, the wire transfers, the shell companies, the bribes. The case against Ethan was airtight. They had enough to send him to prison for 20 years. But Adrian wasn't interested in prison. "Federal prosecutors will want to cut a deal," he explained one night while they reviewed bank statements. "Ethan will cooperate, name his partners, plead down to something manageable. He'll lose some money, serve 18 months at a minimum security facility, and walk out with half his connections still intact. So what's the alternative? Public exposure before the indictment." Adrian looked up from the laptop. "We leaked the evidence to an investigative journalist. Someone with credibility. Someone who can't be bought or intimidated. The story breaks the same night as the gala, while Ethan is standing in a room full of people whose respect he needs to survive. By the time federal prosecutors make their move, his reputation is already destroyed. The deal gets worse. The fallout gets bigger. And most importantly, he can't hurt me," Vivien finished quietly. "Exactly." She stared at the financial documents spread across the coffee table. Numbers that represented lives destroyed, careers ruined, public trust betrayed. All of it orchestrated by the man she'd promised to love forever. "Who's the journalist?" she asked. "Her name is Ingrid Halverson. She's been investigating state contract corruption for 3 years. She's relentless, she's untouchable, and she hates men like Ethan Cole. Will she publish it? If the evidence is solid enough." Adrian closed the laptop. "I'm meeting with her tomorrow. I'll give her everything we have. If she bites, the story goes live the morning after the gala." Vivien's hands folded in her lap. What if Ethan finds out before then? Then he'll try to stop it, which is why you need to be perfect at that gala, Vivien. You need to walk in looking so completely in control that nobody, especially Ethan, suspects you're the one holding the knife. Badfi. 3 days before this gala, Ethan's lawyer called. Vivien was in the middle of a therapy session with Dr. Reyes when her phone buzzed. She ignored it, but it buzzed again and again. Dr. Reyes glanced at the phone. Do you need to get that? No. But the buzzing didn't stop. Finally, Vivien picked up. Hello? Mrs. Cole, this is Martin Shepard from Whitfield and Associates. We represent your husband in the divorce proceedings. Vivien's throat tightened. I know who you are. I'm calling to inform you that if you don't sign the settlement agreement by end of business Friday, Mr. Cole will be forced to pursue more aggressive legal action. What kind of action? A full psychiatric evaluation conducted by court-appointed medical professionals. A forensic audit of any accounts in your name. A motion to freeze all assets pending resolution of the divorce. Shepard's voice was smooth, practiced, designed to sound reasonable while delivering threats. Mr. Cole has been more than generous with his settlement offer, Mrs. Cole. Refusing to sign is only going to make this harder on both of you. Vivien looked at Dr. Reyes, who was watching her with quiet attention. Tell Mr. Cole I'll consider his offer, Vivien said carefully. That's not an answer. It's the only answer he's getting today. She hung up. Her hands were shaking. Dr. Reyes leaned forward in her chair. What did they want? To scare me into signing. Vivien pressed her palms flat against her thighs. They're threatening psychiatric evaluations, asset freezes. They want to make me look unstable and broke, so I'll take whatever they're offering. Are you going to? No. Good. Dr. Reyes's expression didn't change, but something approving flickered in her eyes. You're allowed to be angry, Vivien. You're allowed to fight back. What if I'm not strong enough? Strength isn't the absence of fear. It's doing the thing that terrifies you anyway. Dr. Reyes tilted her head. You've been doing that every day for months. You just haven't been calling it strength. The night before the gala, Vivien couldn't sleep. She lay in the dark Brooklyn apartment staring at the ceiling, listening to sirens wail past on the street below. Her phone sat on the nightstand, silent. No messages from Ethan, no calls from Caroline, no threats from lawyers. Just silence. At 2 a.m., she gave up trying to sleep and walked into the living room. Adrian was awake, sitting in the armchair by the window with a book open in his lap. He looked up when she entered. Can't sleep? No. Vivien sat down on the couch, pulling a blanket around her shoulders. I keep thinking about what happens if this goes wrong. Define wrong. If Ethan figures out I'm the one who gave Ingrid the evidence, if he comes after me before the story breaks, if... Her voice cracked. If I walk into that gala and everyone just sees the same broken woman they remember. Adrian closed his book. You're not that woman anymore. How do you know? Because that woman wouldn't be sitting here planning to destroy a billionaire in front of 400 witnesses. That woman would have signed the papers and disappeared. He looked at her steadily. You're terrified. That's normal. But you're also still here. That's what matters. Vivien pulled the blanket tighter. Can I ask you something? Yes? Why are you really doing this? She met his eyes. And don't tell me it's about justice. Nobody goes this far for a stranger without a reason. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the city hummed. Car horns, distant music, the rumble of the subway beneath their feet. My sister was married to a man like Ethan, he said finally. Wealthy, respected, charming in public, cruel in private. He convinced everyone she was unstable. When she tried to leave, he had her committed. She spent 3 months in a psychiatric facility being medicated for conditions she didn't have while he emptied their accounts and filed for custody of their daughter. Vivien's chest tightened. What happened? By the time she got out, he'd won. Full custody. The house? Everything. She had nothing. No money, no credibility, no legal recourse. Everyone believed his version of the story. Adrian's jaw tightened. She killed herself 2 years later. The words landed like stones in dark water. I'm sorry, Vivien whispered. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because I watched my sister beg for help from people who should have believed her, and they all chose to believe him instead. I watched the system that was supposed to protect her destroy her. And I swore I would never let that happen to someone else if I had the power to stop it. Adrian looked at her. So yes, this is about justice. But it's also about making sure that men like Ethan Cole learn that some women fight back. Vivien's throat burned. What was your sister's name? Anna. I'm going to remember her, Vivien said. When I walk into that gala tomorrow night, when I look Ethan in the eye, I'm going to remember that I'm not just fighting for me. Adrian's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Good. They sat in silence for a while, the weight of what tomorrow would bring pressing down on both of them. Finally, Vivien said, I'm scared. I know. What if I freeze? What if I can't do it? Then I'll be right beside you. Adrian's voice was steady, certain. And you'll remember that walking away is always an option, but so is walking forward. The Halverton Gala was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art because billionaires liked their charity events staged in places that reminded them of their own importance. Vivien arrived at 9:45 p.m. in a black Mercedes with tinted windows, her heart slamming against her ribs so hard she thought it might crack bone. Margot had spent 3 hours on her hair and makeup, transforming her into someone who looked like she belonged in this world, elegant, untouchable, expensive. She looked like a weapon wrapped in silk. Adrian sat beside her in a charcoal suit, calm as deep water. Ready? No. Good. Neither are they. The car stopped. The door opened. Vivien stepped out onto the red carpet. Camera flashes exploded in her face like small bombs. Reporters surged forward against the velvet ropes, shouting questions she couldn't hear over the roar of blood in her ears. Beside her, Adrian's hand found the small of her back. Not possessive, just present, and together they walked toward the museum entrance. Every step felt like walking through fire. The doors opened. Music spilled out, strings and piano, and the low murmur of 400 voices pretending to care about causes they'd never personally suffered from. Vivien's vision tunneled. Her breathing went shallow. Then Adrian leaned close and whispered, "They're all looking at you. Let them." Vivien lifted her chin and walked inside. The ballroom was massive, all marble columns and vaulted ceilings and crystal chandeliers that threw light across the crowd like diamonds scattered on black velvet. Women in gowns that cost more than cars, men in tuxedos discussing mergers over champagne, politicians glad-handing donors, the machinery of power dressed up as philanthropy, and every single person turned to stare. The conversation didn't stop exactly. It fractured. Voices stuttered. Glasses paused halfway to mouths. Vivien watched the recognition ripple through the room like a wave, faces she knew, people who'd attended her wedding, friends who'd stopped calling when things got ugly. Then someone whispered, "Is that Vivien Cole?" And the room went very, very quiet. Vivien forced herself to keep walking. Adrian stayed beside her, his presence radiating the kind of cold authority that made powerful people remember they weren't actually untouchable. They moved through the crowd slowly, deliberately, giving everyone time to look, giving everyone time to realize she wasn't broken anymore. A woman in emeralds stepped forward, Patricia Drummond, old money, board member at half the museums in Manhattan. Her smile was cautious, calculating. "Vivien, darling, what a surprise. I didn't know you'd be attending." "Last-minute decision," Vivien said. Her voice came out steady, strong. "Patricia, this is Adrian Volkov." Patricia's smile froze. "Mr. Volkov, I've heard of you." "I'm sure you have." Adrian's tone was polite, empty of warmth. Patricia's gaze flicked between them, trying to solve an equation that didn't make sense. Vivien Cole, the woman everyone assumed had been destroyed by her divorce, standing beside Adrian Volkov like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Well," Patricia said finally, "enjoy the evening." She disappeared into the crowd. Vivien exhaled slowly. "One down. 399 to go," Adrian said. They made it another 20 feet before Vivien saw him. Ethan. He stood near the bar talking to a congressman and a woman Vivien didn't recognize. Young, blonde, perfect in the way that required money and a good surgeon. His new girlfriend, probably. Kara. Ethan looked good. He always looked good. Tuxedo perfectly tailored, hair graying at the temples like a movie president, holding a scotch like he owned the room. Then he saw Vivien. The color drained from his face. For 3 seconds, they just stared at each other across 30 feet of marble and money. Vivien watched him process her presence. The shock, the confusion, the beginning of something that looked like fear. Then his eyes shifted to Adrian, and the fear became real. Ethan said something to the congressman, excused himself, and started walking toward them. Kara followed, confusion written across her pretty face. "Here we go," Vivien whispered. Adrian's hand pressed lightly against her back. "Breathe." Ethan stopped 3 feet away. Up close, Vivien could see the tightness around his eyes, the tension in his jaw. He looked like a man trying very hard to maintain control. "Vivien?" His voice was measured, careful. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I could say the same." Vivien kept her expression neutral. "Hello, Ethan." His gaze flicked to Adrian, then back to her. "We should talk. Privately." "I don't think that's necessary." "I think it is. There are things we need to—" Ethan stopped, seemed to remember they had an audience. "This isn't the place." "Then maybe we shouldn't be having this conversation." Ethan's jaw tightened. Beside him, Kara shifted uncomfortably, clearly trying to figure out what was happening and whether she should be worried. "Who's your friend?" Ethan asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. "Adrian Volkov," Adrian said before Vivien could answer. He didn't offer his hand. Ethan's expression went very carefully blank. "I've heard of you." "I'm sure you have." The two men looked at each other, and Vivien felt the temperature drop 10 degrees. This wasn't just tension. This was recognition between predators. Ethan was realizing in real time that his ex-wife had aligned herself with someone who scared people he did business with, someone who could end him. "Vivien," Ethan said again, voice dropping lower, "we really need to talk about the settlement, about everything." "The settlement your lawyer threatened me with 3 days ago?" Vivien's tone stayed light, conversational. "The one where you promised psychiatric evaluations and asset freezes if I didn't sign by Friday?" Ethan's face went tight. "That was a negotiation tactic. It was a threat. You're being unreasonable. I'm being clear." Vivien stepped closer, close enough to see the panic starting to bloom behind his eyes. "I'm not signing your settlement, Ethan. Not now, not Friday, not ever. If you want a divorce, we're doing it my way." "Your way?" Ethan's voice cracked slightly. "You don't have a way, Vivien. You have nothing. No money, no lawyers, no leverage. Are you sure about that?" The question landed like a blade between ribs. Ethan stared at her. Kara touched his arm uncertainly. Around them, people were starting to notice the confrontation, voices dropping, heads turning, the crowd sensing drama. "What are you talking about?" Ethan asked quietly. Vivien smiled. It felt like breaking glass. "You'll find out soon enough." Then she turned and walked away, Adrian beside her, leaving Ethan standing in the middle of the ballroom, looking like a man who just realized he was standing on a trap door. And someone was about to pull the lever. The rest of the gala unfolded like a fever dream. Vivien moved through the crowd with Adrian, accepting greetings from people who'd ignored her for months, watching their expressions shift from pity to confusion to something approaching fear. Former friends tried to corner her with questions. Reporters circled like sharks. Politicians who'd taken money from Ethan suddenly found reasons to be elsewhere. And through it all, Vivien felt something building in her chest that she barely recognized. Power. Not the kind Ethan had, built on money and manipulation and fear. Something different, clearer. The power that came from finally telling the truth. At 11 p.m., Ingrid Halverson approached her near the champagne fountain. She was in her 50s, gray hair pulled back severely, wearing a black pantsuit that suggested she'd rather be anywhere else. Her eyes were sharp and calculating behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Mrs. Cole," she said quietly. "I wonder if I might have a word." Vivien's pulse jumped. "Of course." They moved to a quiet corner while Adrian stayed nearby, watching. "I received some very interesting documents this morning," Ingrid said. "Bank statements, emails, wire transfer records, all related to your husband's business dealings with state contractors." Vivien's throat went dry. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you?" Ingrid's expression didn't change. Someone sent me 18 months of evidence documenting systematic fraud, bribery, and money laundering connected to Ethan Cole's company. Someone with intimate access to his private servers and financial records. Someone who clearly wants this information public. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm going to publish it tomorrow morning. And I wanted you to know that when I do, your ex-husband's life is going to explode in ways he can't control or contain. Ingrid paused. I also wanted to ask if you're prepared for what comes next. Vivien looked across the ballroom. Ethan was talking to someone from the mayor's office, but his eyes kept finding her, tracking her movements like he was trying to solve a puzzle that didn't make sense. I'm prepared, she said. Good. Ingrid handed her a business card. When the fallout starts, you'll need someone who can tell your side of the story, someone who can't be bought or intimidated. If you want that person to be me, call that number. Then she disappeared back into the crowd. Vivien stood there holding the card, her heart hammering, the weight of what she'd set in motion finally settling onto her shoulders. Adrian appeared beside her. Everything all right? She's publishing tomorrow. I know. Ethan's going to know it was me. Probably. Vivien looked up at him. I can't go back now, can I? No, Adrian said gently. This is the point of no return. Before Vivien could respond, a voice crackled over the sound system. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. The room quieted. Vivien turned. James Halverton, patriarch of the Halverton Foundation, old money, the kind of man who could make or break careers with a phone call, stood at the podium near the stage. He was 80 if he was a day, white-haired, wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than Vivien's car. Thank you all for coming tonight, he said. Before dinner is served, I'd like to invite someone special to say a few words. Many of you know her. Some of you may have lost touch, but I've known her since she was a girl, and I can tell you with certainty that she possesses the same brilliant mind and fierce heart as her late father. Vivien's stomach dropped. Please welcome to the stage, Vivien Cole. The room erupted in polite applause. Vivien stood frozen. Adrian leaned close. You don't have to do this. Yes, Vivien whispered. I do. Because this was it, the moment. The chance to take back everything Ethan had stolen, her voice, her story, her truth. She walked to the podium alone. 400 faces stared up at her. Ethan stood near the back, his expression unreadable. Kara gripped his arm. Caroline watched from a table near the front, eyes wide. Vivien gripped the sides of the podium, and she began to speak. 6 months ago, I stood on a terrace not far from here and tried to remember how to breathe. I'd spent 2 years being told I was unstable. Paranoid, too fragile to handle the reality of my own life. I'd lost 2 pregnancies and been hospitalized twice for conditions I didn't have. I'd watched my friends disappear and my husband replace me, and my entire existence shrink down to a single question. What's wrong with me? Her voice carried across the silent ballroom. Tonight, I want to answer that question. Nothing was wrong with me. Nothing is wrong with me. What was wrong? What is wrong? Is a system that allows powerful men to destroy women's credibility so thoroughly that when we tell the truth, nobody believes us. Someone in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Vivien kept going. My husband, my ex-husband, convinced everyone that I was the problem, that I was too emotional, too unstable, too damaged to see things clearly. And for a long time I believed him, because when everyone around you agrees that you're broken, it becomes easier to believe it yourself than to fight. She could see Ethan now, his face going pale. But I'm not broken. I was being broken. There's a difference. And the moment I understood that difference, I stopped being a victim and started being something else entirely. Vivien paused, breathed. I'm not here tonight to play the wronged wife. I'm not here for sympathy or pity or any of the things people expect from women who survive abuse. I'm here because tomorrow morning, an investigative journalist is going to publish a story about systematic fraud and corruption in New York's state contracting system. And my name, my ex-husband's name, is going to be in that story. Not because I'm a victim, but because I'm a witness. And I refuse to stay silent anymore. The room erupted, not in applause, in shock, in whispered chaos. Ethan pushed through the crowd toward the exit, Kara stumbling behind him. And Vivien stood at the podium watching him run, feeling something inside her chest finally finally break open into something that felt like freedom. She wasn't finished, but she'd crossed the line, and there was no walking back. The applause started somewhere near the back of the ballroom, hesitant at first, like someone testing ice they weren't sure would hold their weight. Then it spread, scattered claps becoming a wave, then a roar that filled the vaulted ceiling and bounced off marble columns until Vivien couldn't tell where the sound was coming from anymore. She stood at the podium, gripping the wood so hard her knuckles had gone white, watching 400 faces she'd spent months hiding from stare back at her with expressions that ranged from shock to admiration to something that looked uncomfortably like fear. Ethan was gone. She'd watched him shove through the crowd toward the exit, like a man fleeing a building that was on fire, Kara struggling to keep up in her heels. Good. Let him run. Let him feel what it was like to have the ground disappear beneath your feet. James Halverton approached the podium, his elderly face creased with something that might have been pride. He touched Vivien's shoulder gently. That was extraordinary, my dear. Your father would have been very proud. Vivien's throat closed. She managed a nod. Then she walked off the stage on legs that felt like water, the applause still thundering around her, and headed straight for the nearest exit. She needed air, needed space, needed to be anywhere but in a room full of people who were already mentally rewriting the story of who she was. Adrian intercepted her near the coat check. His expression was carefully neutral, but she saw something tighter around his eyes. We need to leave, he said quietly. I know. Now, Vivien. The urgency in his voice stopped her. What's wrong? Your speech just became the story of the night. By morning, every outlet in New York is going to be running with it, which means Ethan's going to accelerate his response. Adrian's hand found her elbow, steering her toward a side exit. We need to get you somewhere safe before he figures out his next move. They were halfway to the door when someone grabbed Vivien's arm. Caroline. Her face was flushed, mascara smudged at the corners like she'd been crying or trying not to. Vivien, what the fuck was that? Vivien pulled her arm free. That was the truth. That was a declaration of war. Caroline's voice dropped to a harsh whisper. Do you have any idea what you just did? Ethan's going to destroy you. His lawyers are going to be too busy defending him against federal prosecutors to worry about me. Caroline's eyes went wide. Federal prosecutors? Vivien, what are you talking about? Ask Ethan. I'm asking you, say, and I'm done answering. Vivien stepped back. You chose his side months ago, Caroline. Don't pretend you're worried about me now. She walked away before Caroline could respond, Adrian beside her, and this time nobody stopped them. Outside, the December night was brutal. Wind like knives, temperature dropping toward freezing. The black Mercedes waited at the curb, engine running. They climbed in and the driver pulled away from the museum without needing to be told where to go. Vivien pressed her forehead against the cold window and tried to stop shaking. You did well in there, Adrian said. I feel like I'm going to throw up. That's normal? When does it stop feeling normal? Adrian didn't answer, which was answer enough. They drove through Manhattan in silence, the city scrolling past in streaks of light and shadow. Vivien watched her reflection in the window, still wearing the black silk gown, still looking like someone who belonged at galas and charity dinners, but underneath she could feel everything starting to crack. Her phone started buzzing, text after text lighting up the screen. Holy shit, Viv, are you okay? That speech was insane. Call me when you can. Ethan is furious. You're so brave, you're so stupid. What were you thinking? She turned the phone off and threw it in her clutch. Ingrid's story goes live at 6 a.m., Adrian said. That gives Ethan about 7 hours to try to get ahead of it. He'll call in every favor he has, talk to every lawyer, threaten every outlet. But it won't matter. The evidence is too clean. The story's too big. By the time the sun comes up, his life is going to be over. Vivien turned to look at him. Why don't you sound happy about that? Because victory comes with consequences you haven't thought about yet. Like what? Like the fact that you just publicly declared yourself an enemy to one of the most powerful men in New York. Like the fact that his allies are going to come after you to protect their own interests. Like the fact that federal investigations don't distinguish between witnesses and accomplices. And you were married to him for 9 years. Adrian's voice stayed level, clinical. You won tonight, Vivien, But the war's just starting. The car pulled up to the Brooklyn apartment. They climbed out into the freezing night and headed inside, up 3 flights of stairs to the small, safe space that had become Vivien's entire world. Inside, Adrian locked the door, checked the windows, drew the curtains. "You're scaring me," Vivien said. "Good. You should be scared." He turned to face her. "Pack a bag, essentials only. We're moving you to a different location tonight." "Why?" "Because Ethan knows where this apartment is." Vivien's blood went cold. "How?" "I don't know, but he knows, which means this place isn't safe anymore." Adrian pulled out his phone. "I'm calling a car. We leave in 20 minutes. Vivien stood in the middle of the small living room, the place where she'd spent months rebuilding herself piece by piece, and felt the floor tilt beneath her feet again. "Where are we going?" "Upstate. A house I own near the Hudson. Nobody knows about it except me." "What about Dr. Reyes? My therapy appointments?" "We'll figure it out." "What about—" Vivien's voice cracked. "What about my life, Adrian? I can't just keep running forever." "You're not running. You're surviving." Adrian looked at her, and for the first time she saw something almost like sympathy in his eyes. "I know this isn't what you wanted, but it's what you have. So pack your bag and let's go." Vivien packed. Clothes, toiletries, the external hard drive with all the evidence. A photo of her parents she'd kept hidden at the bottom of her drawer. Everything else, the books, the half-empty bottles of shampoo, the life she'd been trying to build, stayed behind. They were in the car heading north on the FDR drive when Vivien's phone buzzed again. She turned it back on out of habit, some part of her brain still conditioned to respond when technology demanded attention. The screen lit up with a single text from an unknown number. "You made a mistake tonight." Vivien's hands went numb. She showed the text to Adrian. His jaw tightened. "Block it." "What if it's important?" "It's a threat. Block it." But before Vivien could, another text came through. "You think you're safe with Volkov? Ask him about his sister. Ask him what really happened." Vivien's breath stopped. She looked at Adrian. "What is this?" "I don't know." "It's talking about Anna, your sister." I said, "I don't know." His voice had gone flat, dangerous. Another text. "Ask him why Anna really died. Ask him who she was running from." "Adrian," Vivien's voice shook. "What is this person talking about?" "Someone trying to get in your head. Someone who wants you to doubt me so you'll make a mistake." Adrian didn't look at her, just stared straight ahead at the dark highway. "Don't respond. Block the number." But Vivien's hands were frozen, staring at the screen as another message appeared. She killed herself because of him, because he used her the same way he's using you. "Stop the car," Vivien said. "What?" "Stop the fucking car." The driver glanced at Adrian in the rearview mirror. Adrian shook his head slightly, but Vivien was already reaching for the door handle. "Stop the car or I'm jumping out." The car pulled over onto the shoulder. Traffic screamed past. Vivien turned to Adrian, her chest tight, everything inside her screaming that something was wrong. "Tell me the truth," she said. "Right now. What happened to your sister?" Adrian's expression was stone. "I told you what happened. You told me she killed herself after her husband destroyed her. But this person is saying she killed herself because of you." Vivien's voice rose. "So which is it?" "Vivien, don't fucking lie to me. Not now. Not after everything." Adrian stared at her for a long moment. Then he said very quietly, "Get back in the car." "Answer the question. Get back in the car and I'll explain everything." "No. Explain now." Something flickered across Adrian's face. Anger, maybe, or resignation. He nodded to the driver, who got out and walked a few yards away to give them privacy. Then Adrian turned to Vivien. "My sister's husband was a piece of shit," he said. "You know that part. What I didn't tell you is that I'm the one who got her out. I helped her leave. I set her up in a safe apartment, hired lawyers, got her custody of her daughter. I did everything right. But I also used her. I used her testimony to build a case against her husband, not just for the abuse, but for financial crimes I'd been investigating. Securities fraud, embezzlement, things that had nothing to do with her suffering but would put him away for 20 years. Adrian's voice stayed level, empty. I convinced her that testifying was the right thing, that it would protect other women, that she'd be safe. Vivien's stomach turned. What happened? Her husband found out. He had connections, judges, prosecutors, people who owed him favors. They buried the case. And then they came after Anna. They destroyed her credibility the same way Ethan destroyed yours, made her look unstable, vindictive, a liar seeking revenge. Adrian's jaw tightened. She called me 2 days before she killed herself, asked me if it was worth it, if destroying him was worth what it cost her. What did you say? I said yes. Adrian looked at her. I was wrong. The confession hung in the air between them. Traffic roared past, shaking the car. So this person, whoever's texting me, is right, Vivien said slowly. You are using me, the same way you used her. No, don't lie. I'm not using you, Vivien. I'm helping you. There's a difference. Is there? Her voice cracked. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you saw a broken woman who reminded you of your sister and decided this was your chance for redemption. You gave me evidence, pushed me toward Ingrid, coached me through that speech. Also, I'd destroy Ethan the way you couldn't destroy Anna's husband. That's not, And now I'm in a car heading to some secret house in the middle of nowhere because apparently my ex-husband knows where I've been living and I'm getting threatening texts from someone who knows things about your past that you conveniently forgot to mention. Vivien's hands were shaking. So tell me, Adrian, what's the fucking difference? Adrian's expression went carefully blank. The difference is that I gave you a choice. Anna never had one. She didn't know what she was walking into. You did. Every step of the way, you knew. I knew what you told me. You knew enough. Did I? Vivien pulled out her phone, showed him the texts. Because this person seems to think there's a lot I don't know. Adrian stared at the screen. That's Ethan. What? Or someone working for him. This is exactly what he does. Plants doubt, creates chaos, makes you question everyone around you so you'll isolate yourself and make mistakes. Adrian's voice hardened. He did it to you during your marriage. He's doing it again now. How do I know you're not lying? You don't. Adrian met her eyes. You just have to decide who you trust more. The man who helped you escape or the man who destroyed you in the first place. Vivien stared at him. Everything in her chest felt broken and scattered and wrong. Her phone buzzed again. One more thing. Ask him where he was the night you called him for help. Ask him how he knew you'd be on that terrace. Vivien's breath stopped. She looked up at Adrian. How did you know I'd be at the plaza that night? What? The night we met. You said you were at the gala, but you don't go to galas. You said so yourself. You don't attend charity events or public gatherings. Her voice rose. So why were you there? And how did you know I'd be on that terrace? Adrian's expression didn't change. I told you, I make it my business to know things about powerful men. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. No. Vivien grabbed his arm. You don't get to do this. You don't get to ask me to trust you while hiding things, so tell me the truth. Right now. Why were you at that gala? Silence. Then Adrian said very quietly, Because I was following you. The words landed like a fist to the throat. What? I'd been tracking Ethan's business dealings for 6 months. I knew he was running shell companies. I knew about the bribes. I knew he was close to getting caught. Adrian's voice stayed calm, clinical. And I knew that when things started falling apart, he'd need someone to blame. Someone he'd already convinced everyone was unstable. Someone whose testimony could be dismissed as the ravings of a mentally ill woman. Vivien's vision tunneled. Me. Yes. So you… what? You decided to save me? I decided to give you options. Adrian looked at her steadily. I watched you for weeks, Vivien. I saw how he treated you, how he gaslit you, isolated you, convinced everyone around you that you were the problem. I saw you breaking, and I knew that when Ethan finally went down, he was going to drag you with him unless someone intervened. So you stalked me. I observed you. You manipulated me into thinking we met by chance. I gave you a card, you called it. That was your choice. After you engineered a situation where I'd have no other options. Vivien's voice cracked. You said I knew what I was walking into, but I didn't. I didn't know any of this. I thought you were helping me because you cared, but you were just using me to get to Ethan. That's not true, isn't it? Tears burned hot behind her eyes. You found a broken woman who reminded you of your dead sister, and you saw an opportunity. You gave me evidence, made me feel powerful, pushed me into that gala so I'd publicly destroy my ex-husband, and you could finally get the justice you failed to get for Anna. And now I'm what? Your redemption arc? Stop. Why? Because the truth hurts? Vivien shoved him, hard. You're just like him. You're just like Ethan. You both pretended to save me while actually controlling every fucking move I made. The only difference is you were better at hiding it. Adrian's jaw went tight. If that's what you believe, then get out of the car. What? Get out. Go back to Manhattan. Sign Ethan's settlement. Take your $12,000 a month and disappear. Live the small, safe life he's offering you and tell yourself you made the smart choice. You can't. Or stay in this car and accept that I'm not perfect, that I have my own reasons for helping you, and they're tangled up with guilt and rage and all the other shit that comes from watching someone you love destroy themselves. Stay in the car and accept that sometimes the person who pulls you out of the fire has burned hands too. Adrian's eyes burned into hers. But make a choice, Vivien, because I'm done being blamed for giving you options you were too afraid to take on your own. The words cut deep. Vivien sat there, shaking, tears streaming down her face, everything she'd built over the last 6 months crumbling around her. She thought about the speech she'd given tonight, the power she'd felt standing at that podium, the way Ethan's face had gone white when she'd finally told the truth. She thought about Anna, about all the women who'd been used and destroyed by men who claimed to love them. And she thought about the fact that Adrian was right. She had made choices, every step of the way. Even when she didn't understand the full picture, even when she was terrified, even when staying would have been easier, she'd chosen to fight. She'd chosen this. Drive, she said hoarsely to the driver. The driver got back in. The car pulled onto the highway. Adrian didn't say anything, just stared out the window at the dark road ahead. They drove north in silence. The house was an hour outside the city, hidden at the end of a long gravel driveway surrounded by bare trees that looked like skeletons against the night sky. It was smaller than the Westchester estate, just 2 stories, stone and glass, modern but understated. The kind of place that existed off every grid that mattered. Inside, it smelled like cold air and dust. Adrian turned on lights, cranked the heat, showed Vivien to a bedroom on the 2nd floor with a view of the frozen woods. Get some sleep, he said. We'll figure out next steps in the morning. I can't sleep. Try anyway. He left her alone. Vivien sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing the black gown, her phone clutched in her hand. No more texts had come through. Maybe whoever was fucking with her had gotten what they wanted. Doubt, chaos, another fracture in her already broken foundation. She thought about calling Dr. Reyes, about texting Caroline, about reaching out to anyone who might anchor her to something real. Instead, she opened her laptop and searched for news about the gala. The story was already everywhere. Vivien Cole makes shocking speech at charity gala. Ethan Cole's ex-wife promises truth about fraud investigation society. Wife turned whistleblower. Inside Vivien Cole's transformation. She scrolled through article after article, watching journalists dissect her words, analyze her body language, speculate about what she knew and when she knew it. Some painted her as brave. Others called her vindictive. A few suggested she was mentally unstable, and this was all an elaborate breakdown. The comments were worse. She's just a bitter ex-wife trying to ruin him. If she had evidence, why wait 6 months? Ethan dodged a bullet divorcing her. This woman is my hero. Vivien closed the laptop. At 3 a.m., she finally peeled off the gown and crawled under the covers. She didn't sleep. Just lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around her, wondering what the fuck she'd done. At 5:45 a.m., her phone buzzed. Ingrid Halverson, Stories Live, prepare yourself. Vivien opened her browser. The headline filled the screen. Fraud, bribery, and betrayal. Inside Ethan Cole's empire of corruption. Her hands went numb. She read through the entire piece. 12,000 words detailing shell companies, kickbacks, illegal contracts, and a web of corruption that reached into the highest levels of New York's government. Ingrid had done her job perfectly. The evidence was airtight, the sourcing was meticulous, and Ethan's name was in every paragraph, tied to crimes that would put him away for decades. At the bottom of the article, a note. Federal prosecutors confirmed they are pursuing charges. Mr. Cole's attorney declined to comment. Vivien set the phone down. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. Ethan's life was over. And hers was just beginning. Or so she thought. At 6:30 a.m., someone knocked on the bedroom door. "Come in," Vivien called. Adrian entered. He looked like he hadn't slept either, jaw tight, eyes shadowed, still wearing the clothes from last night. "We have a problem," he said. Vivien's stomach dropped. What kind of problem? Ingrid's story broke an hour ago. Ethan's lawyers are already responding. They're claiming you fabricated evidence, that you had a psychotic break and manufactured documents to frame him out of revenge. That's insane. The evidence is real. They're also claiming you were hospitalized multiple times for psychiatric issues, that you were on medications that caused delusions and paranoia, that your therapist recommended you be committed for your own safety. Adrian's voice stayed level. And they have affidavits from 3 separate doctors backing their claims. Vivien's blood went cold. What doctors? Dr. Morrison, the psychiatrist Ethan chose for you. He's saying you showed signs of delusional disorder and fabricated elaborate conspiracies about your husband's business dealings. That's not what happened. There's more. Adrian's jaw tightened. Caroline gave a statement. She's saying you called her 3 weeks ago claiming Ethan was trying to have you killed, that you were paranoid, erratic, talking about shadow organizations and government conspiracies. I never said that. Vivien's hand started shaking. This is exactly what he does. This is gaslighting on a massive scale. I know, but it's working. Adrian sat down in the chair by the window. Ethan's lawyers are moving fast. They're going to try to get the evidence thrown out by arguing you had access to his systems during your marriage and fabricated documents after the fact during a mental health crisis. They're going to paint you as an unstable woman seeking revenge, and they're going to use your own medical history to do it. Vivien couldn't breathe. Can they win? If they convince a judge you're not a credible witness? Yes. So everything, the speech, the evidence, all of it, could fall apart if they destroy your credibility first. Vivien stood up too fast, her legs almost buckling. What do I do? You prove you're not crazy. Adrian looked at her. You sit for an independent psychiatric evaluation. You submit to interviews. You cooperate with federal prosecutors and let them verify every piece of evidence themselves. You do everything right and hope it's enough. And if it's not? Adrian didn't answer. Vivien walked to the window, looked out at the frozen woods. The sun was coming up, pale and cold. Below, the driveway stretched empty and quiet. No cars, no reporters, no lawyers, just silence. I need to call Dr. Reyes, she said. She's already been subpoenaed. Vivien spun around. What? Ethan's lawyers are demanding her patient files. They want transcripts of every session, every note, every diagnosis. They're building a case that you're mentally unstable and she either missed it or enabled it. They can't do that. Doctor-patient privilege gets complicated when there's an ongoing federal investigation and questions about witness credibility. Adrian's expression was grim. I'm sorry, Vivien. I didn't see this move coming. I should have, but I didn't. Vivien sank back down onto the bed. Her chest felt crushed. Her vision tunneled. He's going to win, she whispered. After everything, he's still going to win. Not if you fight. I'm so tired of fighting. I know. Adrian crossed the room, crouched down in front of her so they were eye level. But you don't get to stop now. You poked the bear, Vivien. You stood up at that gala and declared war. And now Ethan is responding the only way he knows how, by trying to destroy you completely. So you have 2 choices. You can break, or you can become someone he can't break. I don't know how to do that. Yes, you do. Adrian's eyes locked on hers. You've been doing it for 6 months. You just keep forgetting that the woman you are now isn't the woman you were then. Vivien's phone buzzed on the nightstand. She picked it up. Unknown number. You're finished. By the time my lawyers are done with you, nobody will believe a word you say. You'll be lucky if you're not in a psychiatric facility by Christmas. Sign the settlement or lose everything. E. Vivien stared at the message until the letters blurred. Then something inside her shifted. Not broke. Shifted. She looked up at Adrian. I want to meet with him, she said. What? Ethan. I want to sit down face to face and talk to him. No lawyers. No intermediaries. Just us. That's a terrible idea. Why? Because he might hurt me? He's already hurting me. He's been hurting me for years. Vivien stood up. I'm done hiding. I'm done running. If he wants to destroy me, he's going to have to do it while looking me in the eye. Adrian stared at her. You're serious? Completely. He'll record the conversation. Use everything you say against you. Good. Let him, because I'll record it too. And when he tries to gaslight me or threaten me or convince me I'm crazy, I'll have proof of exactly what he does. Vivien's voice hardened. You said I need to prove I'm not unstable. Fine. I'll prove it by showing everyone what he's really like when nobody's watching. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. All right. I'll arrange it, but you need to understand this could go very, very wrong. Everything has already gone wrong, Vivien said. At least this way I'm choosing how it ends. The meeting was set for Thursday afternoon at a neutral location, a private conference room in a midtown office building that neither of them had any connection to. Vivien spent the 2 days preparing like she was studying for an exam she couldn't afford to fail. She reviewed every conversation she'd had with Ethan over the last 9 years, looking for patterns in how he manipulated language. She practiced staying calm under pressure with Dr. Reyes over video call. She rehearsed responses to every accusation she could imagine him throwing at her. And she wore a wire. Not a literal wire. Too obvious. Too easy to find. Just her phone in her coat pocket with a recording app running silently in the background. Legal in New York as long as one party consented to the recording. And Vivien very much consented. Adrian drove her into the city on Thursday morning. They didn't talk much. He'd made his objections clear. Now he was just along for the ride. I'll be waiting in the car, he said when they pulled up to the building. If anything goes wrong, if you feel unsafe for even a second, text me and I'll come up. I'll be fine. Vivien, I'll be fine, she repeated. Then softer. Thank you. For all of this. Even the parts I'm still angry about. Adrian's expression flickered into something almost like a smile. You're welcome, even for the parts you're still angry about. Vivien got out of the car. The building was one of those anonymous Manhattan towers filled with law firms and financial consultancies, polished marble lobby, security guards who barely looked up, elevators that moved too slowly. She rode to the 14th floor alone, her heart slamming against her ribs, her hands surprisingly steady. The conference room was at the end of a quiet hallway. Through the glass door, she could see Ethan already sitting at the table. He looked tired, older, like the last 3 days had aged him in ways money couldn't fix. His suit was still impeccable, his hair still perfect, but there were shadows under his eyes she'd never seen before. He looked up when she entered. For 3 seconds, they just stared at each other. Then Ethan said, "Close the door." Vivien closed it. She sat down across from him, setting her coat carefully on the chair beside her, phone in the pocket, recording. "Thank you for coming," Ethan said. His voice was measured, controlled, the tone he used in boardrooms when he needed to win over difficult clients. "You threatened me into coming. I gave you options. That's different. Is it?" Ethan leaned back in his chair. "You look well. Better than the last time I saw you. The last time you saw me was at the gala where I called you out for fraud in front of 400 people. Yes, that." Ethan's jaw tightened. "That was a mistake, Vivien. Was it? You don't understand what you've done. The people you've made angry, the systems you've disrupted." His eyes locked on hers. "This isn't just about us anymore. You've dragged federal prosecutors, state officials, journalists, everyone into our private business, and now they're all looking for someone to blame." "Good. They should blame you. They're going to blame both of us." Ethan leaned forward. "You think you're safe because you handed over evidence. But that evidence came from illegal access to my private systems. You hacked my accounts, Vivien. You stole proprietary information. You violated a dozen different laws in your little crusade for justice. Vivien's blood went cold. That's not... And when federal prosecutors realize that their star witness is actually a co-conspirator who committed crimes to obtain the evidence, they're going to come after you too. Ethan's voice stayed calm, deadly. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to recant everything you said at that gala. You're going to issue a public statement saying you were mentally unwell when you made those accusations. You're going to enter a psychiatric facility for treatment voluntarily. And when you come out, you're going to sign my settlement agreement and disappear. What? And if I don't? Then I'll make sure you spend the next 5 years in prison for computer fraud, theft of trade secrets, and anything else my lawyers can throw at you. And when you get out, you'll have nothing. No money, no credibility, no future. Ethan's eyes glittered. Is that what you want? Vivien sat very still. She thought about Anna, about all the women who'd been backed into corners by men who believed power meant they could rewrite reality. She thought about the speech she'd given, the way it felt to finally tell the truth, and she thought about the recording device in her pocket capturing every word of this conversation. No, she said quietly, that's not what I want. Ethan's shoulders relaxed slightly. Good, so we have an understanding. What I want is for you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. Vivien's voice stayed level, cold. I know you're scared, Ethan. I know your lawyers told you the evidence is solid. I know federal prosecutors are building a case you can't escape. And I know that the only way you survive this is by destroying my credibility so thoroughly that nobody believes anything I say. Vivien, but here's the thing you keep forgetting. I'm not the fragile woman you married anymore. I'm not the person you gaslit and manipulated and convinced was crazy. That woman is gone. And the woman sitting across from you right now, she doesn't scare easily. Ethan's expression hardened. Are you threatening me? I'm telling you the truth. Vivien leaned forward. You can come after me with every lawyer you have. You can subpoena my medical records and drag my therapist through depositions and paint me as an unstable ex-wife seeking revenge. You can do all of that. But it won't change the fact that the evidence is real. The shell companies existed, the bribes happened, the contracts were awarded illegally, and no amount of character assassination is going to make that go away. You can't prove any of that without your credibility intact. Actually, I can, because the evidence speaks for itself. And once federal prosecutors verify it, which they will, your life is over. Vivien stood up. So go ahead, Ethan. Keep threatening me. Keep trying to control me. Keep pretending you have power you don't actually have anymore. But understand this. I'm not signing anything. I'm not recanting anything. And I'm sure as hell not checking myself into a psychiatric facility to make your legal defense easier. She grabbed her coat. Ethan stood too, his face flushing. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. No. Vivien looked at him one last time. The biggest mistake of my life was believing you when you said you loved me. Everything after that is just damage control. She walked toward the door. Vivien, wait. She didn't wait. She walked out of the conference room, down the quiet hallway, into the elevator. Her hands didn't start shaking until she was in the lobby. Outside, the December afternoon was gray and cold. Vivien climbed into the Mercedes where Adrian was waiting. How did it go? He asked. Vivien pulled out her phone, stopped the recording. 23 minutes of Ethan threatening, manipulating, and admitting that federal prosecutors had a solid case. It went perfectly, she said. Then she started crying. Not from sadness, not from fear, from relief. Because for the first time in 9 years, she'd stood up to Ethan Cole and walked away intact. Gate. They were halfway back to the Hudson Valley when Vivien's phone rang. Ingrid Halverson. Turn on the news, Ingrid said without preamble. Any channel. Vivien put the call on speaker, pulled up a news app. The headline made her stomach drop. Breaking. Federal agents raid Cole Financial Headquarters. Below it, a video showed FBI agents in windbreakers carrying boxes out of Ethan's building. Reporters swarmed the entrance. Helicopters circled overhead. They moved fast, Ingrid said. Faster than anyone expected. Someone inside the U.S. Attorney's office must have gotten nervous about the story and decided to act before Ethan could destroy evidence. Is this good? Vivien asked. For the case? Yes. For you? Ingrid paused. It's complicated. The raid gives Ethan less time to build his defense, which means he's going to come after you even harder to try to get the evidence thrown out. Expect his lawyers to file motions questioning your mental state, your access to his systems, everything. Let them. Vivien, I have a recording of Ethan admitting federal prosecutors have a solid case and threatening me into recanting my testimony. I have 6 months of documentation showing how he gaslit me during our marriage, and I have the best investigative journalist in New York on my side. Vivien's voice hardened. Let his lawyers come. I'm ready. Ingrid was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed, sharp and surprised. You know what? I believe you. Call me tomorrow. We need to talk about next steps. The line went dead. Vivien set the phone down and stared out the window at the gray highway scrolling past. You're different, Adrian said. What? Than you were 6 months ago, than you were even 3 days ago. He glanced at her. You're not breaking anymore. You're breaking through. Vivien thought about that, about the woman she used to be, the one who couldn't leave a terrace without falling apart, who believed everyone when they said she was unstable, who thought the only way out was surrender. That woman was gone. I spent so long thinking I had to survive him, she said quietly. But survival isn't enough anymore. I need to become someone he can never touch again. And how do you do that? Vivien looked at her reflection in the window, hollow-eyed, exhausted, but somehow still here. I stopped being afraid of him, she said, and I start being the thing he should have been afraid of all along. The car drove north into the gathering dark, and Vivien closed her eyes. Tomorrow, Ethan's lawyers would file their motions. Tomorrow, the media would pick apart her speech and her past and every decision she'd made. Tomorrow, the real war would begin. But tonight, just for tonight, Vivien let herself believe she might actually win. The federal indictment dropped on a Wednesday morning 3 weeks after the raid, landing on every news desk in Manhattan like a bomb designed to level empires. Vivien was sitting in the Hudson Valley house drinking coffee when her phone exploded with notifications. She'd stopped checking social media days ago. The comments had become toxic enough to make her physically ill, but the texts kept coming anyway. From Ingrid, from Dr. Reyes, from numbers she didn't recognize. Have you seen it? They got him 23 counts. This is huge. She opened the New York Times on her laptop. The headline filled the screen in letters that felt too big to be real. Ethan Cole indicted on 23 counts of fraud, bribery, and money laundering. Below it, a photograph of Ethan being led into federal court in handcuffs. His face was carefully blank, but his eyes looked like those of a man watching his entire world collapse in slow motion. Vivien stared at the photo until her coffee went cold. She'd won. Actually won. The evidence had held. The case was solid. Ethan was facing 25 years minimum if convicted on all counts. So why did she feel like throwing up? Adrian found her an hour later still sitting at the kitchen table, the laptop open, tears streaming down her face in silence. Hey, he crouched down beside her chair. Talk to me. I can't stop looking at it. Vivien's voice came out hoarse. His face, he looks destroyed. He is destroyed. Good. That's good. That's what I wanted. But I keep thinking about the man I married, not the monster he became, the man he was before, or the man I thought he was. And I keep wondering if any of it was real, if he ever actually loved me, or if I was just useful until I wasn't anymore. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Does it matter? What? Whether he loved you. Does it change what he did? Does it make the gaslighting less real, the manipulation less damaging, the abuse less severe? Adrian's eyes stayed level on hers. You're allowed to grieve the man you thought you married, Vivien. But don't let that grief trick you into forgetting the man he actually was. Vivien wiped her eyes. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I just have a lot of practice watching people confuse nostalgia with reality. Her phone buzzed. Ingrid, call me. Now. Vivien dialed. Have you read the full indictment? Ingrid asked immediately. Just the headlines. Read it. Page 17. There's something you need to see. Vivien pulled up the document, scrolled to page 17. Her vision blurred. The government alleges that Ethan Cole, with the assistance of his wife, Vivien Cole, established a series of shell corporations designed to obscure the origin of funds. Her hands went numb. Ingrid, why is my name in this? Because Ethan's lawyers are claiming you were complicit, that you helped set up the shell companies during your marriage, that you had access to all his accounts and benefited financially from the schemes. Ingrid's voice was tight. It's a defense strategy. They're trying to muddy the waters by making you look like a co-conspirator who turned on him out of spite. But I had no idea what he was doing. I know, and federal prosecutors know too. That's why you're listed as an unindicted co-conspirator, not a defendant. They're protecting you for now. But Vivien, Ingrid paused. Ethan's lawyers are going to come after you hard. They're going to try to prove you knew about the fraud and participated in it. If they succeed, you could be charged too. Vivien's chest constricted. What do I do? You cooperate. Fully. You sit for depositions with federal prosecutors. You answer every question. You prove that you were a victim, not an accomplice. Ingrid's voice softened slightly. And you prepare yourself for the fact that this is going to get worse before it gets better. The call ended. Vivien sat there staring at the indictment, her name printed in black and white beside Ethan's like they were partners in crime instead of what they actually were, abuser and victim, manipulator and manipulated. He's doing it again, she said quietly. Adrian looked up. Doing what? Making everyone think I'm the problem. Even now, even after everything, he's still finding ways to destroy my credibility, to make people question whether I'm a witness or a criminal. Her voice cracked. How do I fight this? The same way you've been fighting, with truth. Adrian stood, walked to the window. Federal prosecutors aren't stupid, Vivien. They've reviewed the evidence. They know you were shut out of Ethan's business operations years before any of this happened. They know you had 2 miscarriages and were hospitalized while he was setting up shell companies in the Cayman Islands. The timeline doesn't support his defense. But what if a jury believes him anyway? What if they look at me and see an angry ex-wife instead of a victim? Then we make sure they hear your voice before Ethan's lawyers can poison it. How? Adrian turned to face her. You testify, not just in depositions, publicly. You sit down with Ingrid and you tell your entire story, every detail, every moment of abuse, every instance of gaslighting, every time he made you question your own sanity. You strip away the illusion he's built, and you show people exactly who he is. Vivien's stomach twisted. That means talking about the miscarriages, the hospitalizations, the breakdowns. Yes, that means letting the entire world see me at my weakest. No, it means letting the world see what he did to you at your weakest. There's a difference. Adrian crossed the room, sat down across from her. I know this is terrifying. I know you want to hide. But hiding means letting Ethan control the narrative one more time. And I don't think that's who you are anymore. Vivien looked at him. This man who'd pulled her out of the fire with burned hands, who'd given her weapons and watched her learn to use them, who'd seen her break and believed she could rebuild. Okay, she said. Set it up. The interview was scheduled for Monday afternoon at Ingrid's office in a nondescript building near Union Square. Vivien spent the weekend preparing, going over every detail of her marriage with Dr. Reyes via video call until the memories stopped feeling like open wounds and started feeling like evidence. She arrived at Ingrid's office wearing jeans and a sweater, no makeup, no jewelry, nothing performative, just herself. Raw and exhausted and done pretending to be anything else. Ingrid's office was small and cluttered with file boxes and old newspapers. She sat behind a desk covered in coffee cups and notepads, her gray hair pulled back, wire-rimmed glasses perched on her nose. Thank you for doing this, Ingrid said. Thank you for believing me. I don't believe people. I believe evidence. Ingrid gestured to the recording equipment set up in the corner. But for what it's worth, the evidence says you're telling the truth. They sat down. The camera started rolling, and Vivien talked. She talked for 3 hours straight, barely stopping for water. She told Ingrid everything, how she'd met Ethan, how charming he'd been at first, how slowly the charm had curdled into control. She described the first time he'd told her she was overreacting, the first time he'd suggested she see a therapist, the first time he'd made her question her own perception of reality. She talked about the miscarriages, How she'd lost the first baby at 14 weeks, and Ethan had been in Dubai closing a deal. How she'd lost the second at 19 weeks and woken up alone in a hospital room with discharge papers and a prescription for antidepressants. How Ethan had suggested maybe motherhood wasn't for her. Maybe she wasn't stable enough. Maybe it was a sign they should focus on his career instead. She talked about the hospitalizations. How after the second miscarriage, she'd stopped sleeping, stopped eating, stopped being able to tell the difference between day and night. How Ethan had told her doctor she was having paranoid delusions about his business. How they'd medicated her until she couldn't think clearly enough to fight back. She talked about the moment on the plaza terrace when she'd realized she had two choices: keep breaking or leave. And she talked about Adrian, about how he'd given her a card with no promises attached, about how she'd spent 6 months learning to trust herself again, about how the woman Ethan had tried to erase had clawed her way back to life one painful decision at a time. By the time she finished, her throat was raw and her eyes were burning, and her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Ingrid turned off the camera. "That was extraordinary," she said quietly. "It was humiliating. It was brave." Ingrid leaned forward. "And it's going to change the conversation. People need to hear this. They need to understand what men like Ethan do to the women who trust them." "When are you publishing it?" "Tomorrow morning. I want to get it out before Ethan's lawyers file their next motion." Ingrid paused. "Are you ready for what comes next?" "No." Vivien stood up, grabbed her coat. "But I'm doing it anyway." The article went live at 6 a.m. Tuesday with the headline, in her own words, Vivien Cole on surviving. Ethan Cole. By 9 a.m., it had been shared 40,000 times. By noon, every major outlet in the country was running stories about it. By 3 p.m., Vivien's phone had melted down completely under the weight of messages, calls, and interview requests. She turned it off and sat in the Hudson Valley house, watching the media cycle devour her life in real time. Some outlets praised her courage. Others questioned her motives. A few suggested the whole thing was a publicity stunt orchestrated by Adrian Volkov to damage Ethan's defense. The comments were worse. "She's lying for attention. If it was so bad, why didn't she leave sooner? Gold digger trying to destroy a good man. This woman is my hero. Ethan Cole is a monster. They're both terrible people." Vivien closed the laptop before she could read more. "Don't," Adrian said from the doorway. "Don't what?" "Read the comments. They don't matter. They matter to the jury pool. They matter to public opinion. They matter to whether people believe me or think I'm just a vindictive ex-wife." Vivien's voice rose. "Everything matters now, Adrian. Every word I say, every expression on my face, every decision I make, it's all being analyzed and dissected and weaponized. So stop caring what they think." "I can't." "Yes, you can. You just don't want to." Adrian crossed the room, sat down beside her. "You spent 9 years letting Ethan convince you that other people's opinions defined your reality. Don't give them that power now." "It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You told the truth. You did it on camera with no filter and no spin. Whether people believe you or not is their problem, not yours." Vivien looked at him. "When did you stop caring what people think?" "The day I realized that the people who matter already know who I am. Everyone else is just noise." Before Vivien could respond, her phone buzzed. She'd turned it back on out of habit, a text from a number she didn't recognize. "You think you've won? You haven't. See you in court. E." Vivien's blood went cold. She showed the text to Adrian. His expression darkened. "He's escalating." "What do you mean?" "This isn't just his lawyers anymore. This is personal. He's reaching out directly because he wants you to know he's not done fighting." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Which means we need to prepare for him to do something desperate." "Like what?" "I don't know, but desperate men make unpredictable choices." As if on cue, Vivien's phone rang. "Ingrid." "Turn on the news," she said without preamble. "Channel 4. Vivien grabbed the remote, flipped to Channel 4. A press conference was in progress. Ethan stood behind a podium flanked by 3 lawyers wearing a navy suit and an expression of wounded dignity. Behind him, a massive screen displayed the words, "The Truth About Vivien Cole." Vivien's stomach dropped. Ethan began speaking, his voice measured and sorrowful. "I've remained silent about my ex-wife's accusations out of respect for her ongoing mental health struggles. But after reading her interview this morning, I can no longer stay quiet while she destroys my reputation with lies and fabrications designed to cover her own involvement in activities she now claims to have been ignorant of. No, Vivien whispered. Vivien Cole was not a victim of our marriage. She was a willing participant in every business decision I made. She had full access to our accounts, our companies, our financial records. She attended meetings with investors. She signed documents creating shell corporations. She benefited from every dollar that came through those entities. Ethan paused for effect. And when federal investigators started asking questions, she decided to save herself by portraying me as an abuser and herself as an innocent victim who knew nothing. The screen behind him changed to display bank statements with Vivien's signature, corporate filings with her name listed as an officer, photos of her at business dinners smiling beside men who'd later been indicted for corruption. Vivien couldn't breathe. My lawyers have provided federal prosecutors with extensive documentation proving that Vivien was aware of and complicit in the business activities she now claims were fraudulent. She is not a whistleblower. She is a co-conspirator attempting to avoid prosecution by destroying my credibility. Ethan's voice hardened, and I will not allow her to rewrite history to suit her narrative. The press conference ended. Vivien sat frozen on the couch, the remote slipping from her numb fingers. He just accused me of being a criminal on national television. Adrian's face had gone carefully blank. The documents he showed were real. I did sign some of those papers. He told me they were for estate planning or tax purposes or... Vivien's voice cracked. I didn't know what I was signing. He'd hand me things and tell me to sign, and I'd sign because I trusted him. So you explain that. You tell federal prosecutors you had no idea. But what if they don't believe me? What if they look at those signatures and decide I was complicit? Vivien stood up too fast, her legs almost buckling. He's doing it again. He's making everyone think I'm the liar, and this time he has proof. Her phone started buzzing, messages pouring in. Did you really sign those documents? Are you going to be charged too? Ethan says you're lying. Is any of this even real? Vivien threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and shattered. I can't do this, she said. I can't keep fighting. Every time I think I've won, he finds a new way to destroy me. I'm so tired, Adrian. I'm so fucking tired. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're fine. You're not the one being dragged through federal court. You're not the one whose entire life is being dissected on cable news. You're not. You're right. Adrian's voice cut through her spiral. I'm not. But I'm also not the one who chose to go to war with a billionaire. That was you. And now you're in the middle of it, and you have two choices. You can collapse, or you can fight back harder. I don't have anything left to fight with. Yes, you do. You have the truth, and the truth is that you signed documents without understanding what they were because your husband manipulated you into trusting him blindly. The truth is that you were gaslit and abused and medicated into compliance. The truth is that Ethan Cole is a master manipulator who's now using his own crimes to frame you as an accomplice. Adrian stepped closer. So you go on camera again. You show those documents. You explain exactly what happened. And you dare him to keep lying. What if people don't believe me? Then they don't believe you, but at least you'll know you told the truth. Vivien stared at him. At this man who'd saved her and used her and believed in her all at once. This man who understood that sometimes the only way out was through. Set it up, she said hoarsely. Another interview, tomorrow. I want to respond before his version becomes the truth. But Ethan didn't wait for tomorrow. That night at 11 p.m., Vivien's new phone, the replacement Adrian had picked up that afternoon, rang with a call from an unknown number. She answered without thinking. Hello? You're going to drop this. Ethan's voice was cold, controlled. You're going to issue a statement saying you exaggerated your claims. You're going to admit you had knowledge of my business operations. And you're going to disappear. Vivien's chest tightened. No. Yes. Because if you don't, I'm going to make sure federal prosecutors charge you as a co-conspirator. I have enough documentation to prove you knew exactly what was happening. I have emails where you asked about offshore accounts. I have meeting notes where you were present during discussions about shell companies. I have testimony from employees who will swear you were involved in every decision. You're lying. Am I? Or are you just realizing how much evidence I kept of your participation? Ethan's voice dropped lower. I spent 9 years making sure that if I ever went down, you'd go down with me. Insurance, Vivien. That's all you ever were. The words landed like bullets. You're a monster. I'm a survivor, just like you claim to be. The difference is I'm better at it. Ethan paused. You have 24 hours to decide. Issue the statement or face federal charges. Your choice. The line went dead. Vivien sat there shaking, the phone pressed to her ear, everything inside her screaming. Adrian found her 20 minutes later sitting on the floor of the bedroom, knees pulled to her chest, rocking slightly. What happened? She told him. Everything. The call, the threats, the evidence Ethan claimed to have. When she finished, Adrian's expression had gone lethal. He's bluffing. What if he's not? Then we call his bluff. Adrian pulled out his phone. I'm calling your attorney, and then I'm calling federal prosecutors. If Ethan wants to threaten you with false charges, he's going to learn very quickly that intimidating a witness is a federal crime. Adrian, he has emails. He has meeting notes. He has context. That's what he has. Emails taken out of context, meeting notes that don't prove understanding, testimony from employees who will say whatever he tells them to say. Adrian crouched down in front of her. But we have something better. We have 6 months of documentation showing how he controlled your access to information. We have medical records proving you were hospitalized and medicated during key periods. We have Dr. Reyes's testimony about your mental state. And we have the recording you made of him threatening you. Vivien looked up. The recording from our meeting. Yes, where he admitted federal prosecutors have a solid case and tried to coerce you into recanting. That recording proves intimidation, coercion, and obstruction of justice. If he wants to threaten you with false charges, we'll bury him with real ones. Something inside Vivien's chest loosened. Not hope, not yet, but something like defiance. What do I do? Nothing. You do nothing. You don't issue a statement. You don't respond to his threats. You let federal prosecutors handle it. Adrian stood, offered her his hand. And tomorrow, you go on camera and you tell everyone exactly what he just did. You expose his intimidation tactics in real time. You show people that even now, even facing federal charges, he's still trying to control you. Vivien took his hand, let him pull her to her feet. This is never going to end, is it? It'll end when he's in prison. Or when you decide you're done fighting, whichever comes first. I'm not done. Good. Adrian's eyes locked on hers. Because he's counting on you breaking, and the worst thing you could do right now is prove him right. The next morning, Vivien sat down with Ingrid again and told the world about Ethan's phone call. She played the recording of their earlier meeting where he'd threatened psychiatric evaluations and asset freezes. She showed the text messages he'd sent. She walked through every document he'd displayed at his press conference and explained exactly what he'd told her each one was for. He told me this was a power of attorney so I could handle household finances while he traveled. He told me this was a tax document our accountant needed signed. He told me this was paperwork for a charitable foundation we were setting up together. Vivien's voice stayed steady, strong. I trusted him. That's what spouses do. And he used that trust to implicate me in crimes I didn't know were happening. So you're saying you had no knowledge of the shell companies or the bribes? Ingrid asked. I'm saying I had no understanding of what those documents actually meant. I saw the words. I signed where he told me to sign, but I never understood that I was being used as cover for fraud. Vivien looked directly into the camera. And the fact that Ethan kept those documents, that he filed them away as insurance in case he ever needed to destroy me, tells you everything you need to know about what our marriage really was. The interview aired at noon. By 2 p.m., federal prosecutors had issued a statement confirming that Vivien Cole was a witness, not a suspect, and that any attempts to intimidate or threaten her would be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. By 4 p.m., Ethan's lawyers had filed an emergency motion claiming their client's phone records showed no calls to Vivien on the night in question. By 6 p.m., Vivien's attorney had submitted the recording as evidence of witness intimidation. The war was accelerating beyond anyone's control. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for Friday morning at the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan. Vivien wasn't required to attend. She wasn't a defendant, just a witness, but Adrian insisted she be there anyway. "You need to show your face," he said while they drove into the city Thursday night. "You need to walk into that courthouse and let everyone see that you're not hiding, that you're not afraid." "I am afraid." "Then fake it." They stayed at a hotel in Tribeca that night. Separate rooms, armed security in the hallway, everything locked down tight. Vivien didn't sleep, just lay in the dark listening to sirens wail past and wondering how her life had turned into a legal thriller she couldn't escape. At 6 a.m., she got up and got dressed. Black suit, minimal makeup, hair pulled back. She looked professional, composed. Nothing like the broken woman Ethan had tried to convince everyone she was. She looked like someone who could win. The courthouse was surrounded by media when they arrived. Cameras everywhere, reporters shouting questions, protesters holding signs that said both justice for Vivien and Ethan Cole is innocent. Adrian's hand found the small of her back as they climbed the stairs. "Keep walking. Don't stop. Don't engage." They made it inside. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, legal analysts, curious spectators who'd lined up at dawn for a seat. Vivien sat in the second row behind the prosecution table, Adrian beside her, and waited. At 9 a.m. exactly, the doors opened. Federal marshals led Ethan into the courtroom. He wore a navy suit and an expression of wounded innocence that made Vivien's stomach turn. His eyes found her immediately. For 3 seconds, they just stared at each other across 20 feet of courtroom. Then Ethan smiled. Not a warm smile. A smile that said, "I'm going to destroy you, and there's nothing you can do to stop me." Vivien forced herself to smile back. A smile that said, "Try me." The judge entered. Everyone stood. The hearing began. For 2 hours, Vivien sat silently while lawyers argued about evidence admissibility, witness credibility, and whether certain documents should be allowed in trial. She watched Ethan's attorneys paint her as a co-conspirator. She watched federal prosecutors counter with medical records and testimony about abuse. She watched her entire life get reduced to legal arguments and procedural motions. And then something unexpected happened. One of Ethan's attorneys, a sharp-faced woman named Patricia Vance, stood and said, "Your Honor, we have new evidence that substantially changes the nature of this case. Evidence that was provided to us just last night by a confidential informant." Vivien's blood went cold. The judge frowned. "What evidence?" "Financial records showing that Mrs. Cole not only knew about the shell companies, she actively profited from them. We have documentation of wire transfers totaling $3 million sent directly to accounts in her name between 2019 and 2024. The courtroom erupted. Vivien couldn't breathe. $3 million? What fucking $3 million? The judge banged his gavel. "Order, Ms. Vance, approach the bench." While the lawyers huddled with the judge, Vivien turned to Adrian. I never received, I know. Then where did those transfers come from?" "Ethan." Adrian's voice was tight. "He's been moving money into accounts in your name without your knowledge, building a paper trail that makes you look complicit." "Can he do that?" "He just did." The lawyers returned to their tables. The judge looked at Vivien. "Mrs. Cole, I'm going to need you to submit to questioning by federal prosecutors regarding these wire transfers. If you cannot explain where this money came from and why you failed to report it, you may face charges of conspiracy and money laundering." The room tilted. Vivien stood on shaking legs. "Your Honor, I have no knowledge of any wire transfers. I haven't had access to my marital accounts in over 6 months. If money was moved into accounts bearing my name, it was done without my knowledge or consent." "That's convenient," Patricia Vance said. "It's the truth. We'll see." The judge banged his gavel again. "This hearing is continued until next week pending investigation of these new allegations. Mrs. Cole, you're ordered to remain in New York and make yourself available for questioning. Court is adjourned." Everyone stood. Vivien walked out of the courtroom in a daze, reporters screaming questions she couldn't hear over the roar in her skull. Adrian steered her through the crowd, down the courthouse steps, into a waiting car that peeled away from the curb before the doors were fully closed. "He set me up," Vivien said. Her voice sounded distant, disconnected. "He actually set me up. He moved money into my name, and now it looks like I was stealing with him. We'll fight it." "How? The money's there. The transfers are real. How do I prove I didn't know?" "We prove it the same way we've proven everything else. With evidence, with testimony, with the truth." Adrian's jaw was tight. "Ethan thinks he's won, but he's made a mistake." "What mistake?" "He's showing his hand too early. Every move he makes to implicate you is another piece of evidence that he's willing to commit crimes to save himself. Fraud, intimidation, fabrication of evidence, it all adds to his charges." Adrian looked at her. "You just have to hold on a little longer." "I don't know if I can." "Yes, you do, because you've already survived the worst thing he could do to you. Everything after this is just details." The car drove north through Manhattan, the city scrolling past in streaks of glass and steel and winter light. Vivien closed her eyes, and for the first time in months, she let herself imagine what it would feel like when this was finally over, when Ethan was in prison, when her name was clear, when she could wake up in the morning without her first thought being, "What's he going to do to me today?" Freedom. She'd almost forgotten what it looked like. That night, Vivien sat alone in the hotel room, going through every bank statement, every financial document, every piece of paper that might explain where $3 million had come from and how it had ended up in accounts she didn't know existed. She found it at 2 a.m. A series of offshore accounts opened in 2019 in her name, her social security number, her signature on the paperwork, forged but convincing. Wire transfers coming in from Ethan's shell companies every quarter, accumulating over 5 years into a sum that would destroy her credibility completely. He'd been planning this for years, building an escape route that required throwing her under the bus. Vivien printed everything, highlighted the forged signatures, noted the dates, most of them during periods when she'd been hospitalized or heavily medicated. Then she called her attorney. "I found it," she said. "The accounts, the transfers, all of it. And I can prove they're fraudulent." Her attorney, a woman named Jennifer Park, who Adrian had hired specifically because she'd spent 15 years prosecuting white-collar crime, sounded wide awake despite the hour. "Send me everything. I'll get a forensic accountant on this first thing tomorrow. If the signatures are forged, we can prove it." "How long will that take?" 72 hours. Maybe less if we push." Jennifer paused. "Vivien, this is actually good news. If Ethan forged your signature to create these accounts, that's bank fraud on top of everything else. He's not just implicating you, he's confessing to additional crimes. So we have him. We have evidence. Whether that translates to conviction depends on the trial. But yes, we have him." Vivien hung up. She sat in the dark hotel room staring at the documents spread across the bed, her entire marriage reduced to paper trails and forged signatures. Somewhere across the city, Ethan was probably sleeping. Or maybe he was awake too, planning his next move, calculating his next attack. It didn't matter. Because Vivien wasn't running anymore. She was done being the victim in Ethan Cole's story. Tomorrow, she'd fight back harder than he'd ever imagined possible. And she'd keep fighting until one of them broke. The only question was which one it would be. Tickets. The forensic accountant's report came back Saturday morning with 3 words that changed everything. Signatures are forged. Jennifer called Vivien immediately. "We've got him. The handwriting analysis is conclusive. Those aren't your signatures on the account documents. Someone forged them, and given that only Ethan had access to your personal information, it's not hard to figure out who." "What does this mean for the case?" "It means federal prosecutors are going to amend the indictment to include additional charges of identity theft, bank fraud, and forgery. It means Ethan's defense just collapsed. And it means you're in the clear." Jennifer's voice was sharp with satisfaction. "Congratulations, Vivien. You just won." But it didn't feel like winning. It felt like standing in the wreckage of a building that had been demolished around her, dust still settling, everything she'd ever believed in reduced to rubble. Adrian found her on the hotel room balcony an hour later, staring out at the city. "Jennifer called me," he said. "Told me the news." "Good. You don't sound happy." "I'm not unhappy. I'm just—" Vivien's voice caught. I'm tired. I'm so tired of fighting, and I keep thinking about what you said at the beginning, that this was going to hurt, that digging up evidence meant reliving everything he did. You were right. It did hurt. It still hurts, and I don't know when it's going to stop. Adrian stepped beside her, leaned against the railing. It stops when you decide it stops. When you decide that Ethan Cole doesn't get to live rent-free in your head anymore. When you decide that survival isn't enough, you want to actually live. How do I do that? One day at a time, one decision at a time, one moment at a time. He looked at her. You've spent the last 6 months becoming someone new, someone stronger, someone who fights back. But that person was built for war. Now you need to figure out who you are in peacetime. Vivien turned to face him. Who are you going to be? What do you mean? When this is over, when Ethan's in prison and I don't need saving anymore, who are you going to be then? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I don't know. I've spent so long being the person who saves people that I've forgotten how to be anything else. Maybe we can figure it out together. Maybe? They stood there on the balcony watching the sun set over Manhattan, two people who'd been broken by different men in different ways, trying to imagine what healing might look like. Below them, the city moved, millions of people living their lives, making their choices, surviving their own wars. And somewhere in a federal detention center, Ethan Cole was realizing that for the first time in his life, he'd lost control of the narrative, that the woman he'd tried to erase had erased him instead. The preliminary hearing reconvened Monday morning with new charges added to the indictment. Ethan's bail was revoked. He was remanded to custody pending trial. Vivien watched from the second row as federal marshals led him away in handcuffs, his face finally showing the fear he'd hidden behind expensive suits and practiced charm. Their eyes met one last time, and Vivien felt nothing, not rage, not satisfaction, not even pity, just the quiet certainty that she would never let another person have that much power over her again. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Vivien stood at the top of the steps with Jennifer beside her and made a brief statement. Ethan Cole spent years convincing me and everyone around me that I was unstable, unreliable, and unable to see reality clearly. He used my trust against me. He weaponized my mental health. He forged my signature on documents designed to implicate me in his crimes. And he did all of this because he believed that powerful men always win and broken women always lose. She paused, letting the words settle. He was wrong. Today, justice caught up with him. And I want every woman watching this to know you are not crazy, you are not imagining things, and you are not alone. If someone is making you doubt your own reality, that's not love, that's abuse, and you deserve better. The cameras flashed, the reporters shouted questions, but Vivien was already walking away. Adrian waited at the bottom of the steps. He didn't say anything, just offered his arm. Vivien took it, and together they disappeared into the crowd. The trial would come later. The conviction, the sentencing, the endless legal aftermath that would drag on for months. But today, just for today, Vivien let herself believe she'd actually survived. And more than that, she'd won. The trial started on a Monday in late February, when Manhattan was buried under 3 inches of dirty snow, and the sky hung low and gray like something waiting to collapse. Vivien had spent the previous 8 weeks in a kind of limbo, not hiding exactly, but not living either. She'd moved out of the Hudson Valley house into a small apartment in Brooklyn that Adrian helped her lease under a name that wasn't hers. She'd attended endless prep sessions with Jennifer and federal prosecutors, going over her testimony until the words stopped sounding like memories and started sounding like lines in a script she'd memorized but never quite believed. She'd cut her hair, stopped wearing makeup, started running every morning through Prospect Park until her lungs burned and her legs went numb, because the only way she could quiet her mind was to exhaust her body first. Dr. Reyes told her this was normal, that trauma survivors often felt untethered after the immediate crisis passed, like they'd been bracing for impact for so long that standing upright without the weight of fear felt impossible. You spent 6 months in survival mode, Dr. Reyes said during one of their sessions. Your nervous system doesn't know how to relax yet. It's still waiting for the next attack. When does it stop waiting? When you teach it that you're safe now. But Vivien didn't feel safe. She felt like she was standing on a platform waiting for a train that might never come, or might come screaming around the corner too fast to avoid. The trial was that train, Opening arguments began at 10 a.m. in a courtroom that felt too small for the weight of everything it contained. Vivien sat in the second row again, Adrian beside her, and watched 12 jurors file in, 8 women, 4 men, faces carefully neutral, already exhausted by the media circus that had surrounded jury selection for 2 weeks. The prosecution went first. A sharp-eyed attorney named Marcus Webb stood and delivered an opening statement that reduced Ethan's crimes to their essential components: fraud, bribery, money laundering, schemes designed to enrich himself at the expense of public trust. He showed the jury photographs of shell companies, wire transfers, emails discussing kickbacks like they were discussing lunch orders. Then he showed them a photograph of Vivien. This is Vivien Cole. For 9 years she was married to the defendant. For 9 years she trusted him. And for 9 years Ethan Cole used that trust to cover his crimes, manipulate her reality, and ultimately attempt to destroy her credibility when she threatened to expose the truth. Webb paused. You will hear testimony from Mrs. Cole about what it's like to be married to a man who uses love as a weapon, who convinces you that your own perceptions are wrong, who makes you question your sanity so thoroughly that when you finally find evidence of his crimes, you don't even trust yourself to believe it. Vivien felt every eye in the courtroom turn toward her. She forced herself to sit still, hands folded in her lap, breathing slowly through her nose. Webb continued, The defense will tell you that Mrs. Cole is a vindictive ex-wife seeking revenge. They will tell you she fabricated evidence. They will tell you she was complicit in the defendant's schemes and only turned on him when she got caught. But the evidence will show you something very different. It will show you a pattern of abuse, manipulation, and gaslighting that spans nearly a decade. It will show you how Ethan Cole built an empire on fraud and used his wife as both shield and scapegoat. And it will show you that when she finally escaped, she did something most survivors never get the chance to do. She fought back. He sat down. The defense stood. Patricia Vance looked every inch the killer attorney she was rumored to be. Immaculate gray suit, not a hair out of place, eyes cold as January. She walked to the jury box slowly, letting the silence build. Vivien Cole is not a victim, she said. She is a woman who enjoyed 9 years of luxury funded by money she now claims to have known nothing about. She lived in penthouses and townhouses. She wore designer clothes. She attended galas and charity events on her husband's arm, smiling for cameras while benefiting from every dollar that came through his companies, legal or otherwise. Vivien's hands tightened in her lap, and when federal investigators started asking questions, when the walls began closing in, Mrs. Cole made a calculated decision. She decided to save herself by destroying her husband. She fabricated a narrative of abuse and manipulation. She stole confidential business documents. She conspired with known criminals. Vance's eyes flicked toward Adrian, to build a case against the man who gave her everything. And now she sits in this courtroom playing the victim while attempting to send my client to prison for crimes she helped commit. Vance let that hang in the air. Then she continued, The evidence will show that Mrs. Cole had full access to her husband's financial records, that she signed documents creating shell corporations, that she attended meetings where illegal activities were discussed, that she received millions of dollars in wire transfers she never reported, and most importantly, that when she realized she might face consequences for her own actions, she turned state's witness and blamed everything on the man she'd spent 9 years enabling. She returned to the defense table. At the end of this trial, you will see Vivien Cole for what she really is, not a survivor, but a conspirator, and you will acquit my client of these baseless charges. The opening statements ended. The prosecution began calling witnesses. For 3 days, Vivien sat in the courtroom listening to forensic accountants explain shell companies and money laundering schemes. She listened to FBI agents describe the raid on Ethan's offices. She listened to Richard Melrose, the state official who'd taken bribes, testify under immunity about how Ethan had structured kickbacks to look like legitimate consulting fees. And then, on Thursday afternoon, Marcus Webb called Vivien to the stand. The walk from the gallery to the witness box felt longer than any distance Vivien had ever traveled. Her legs felt like water. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Behind her, she could feel Ethan's eyes boring into her back. She raised her right hand, swore to tell the truth. She sat down. Marcus Webb smiled at her gently. Mrs. Cole, thank you for being here today. I know this is difficult. Yes. Can you tell the jury how you met the defendant? Vivien took a breath. Let it out slowly. We met at a Columbia University fundraiser in 2015. I was 25. He was 37. He seemed kind, charming, interested in who I was beyond just what I looked like. What was your relationship like in the beginning? Good. He was attentive. He'd send flowers to my office. He'd remember small things I mentioned in passing. He made me feel seen. Vivien's voice stayed steady. About 6 months in, he proposed. Everyone told me it was fast, but I thought it was romantic. When did things start to change? After we got married. Small things at first. He'd make comments about my weight, suggest I dress differently when we attended his work events, tell me I'd misunderstood something he'd said when I could have sworn I remembered it correctly. Vivien's hands folded in her lap. Then bigger things. He'd get angry if I made plans without checking with him first. He started monitoring my credit card statements, asking about every purchase. He told me my friends were jealous of our relationship, and that's why they seemed distant. Did you believe him? Yes, because he was so convincing. And because when you love someone, you want to believe they're telling you the truth. Marcus walked her through the marriage, the miscarriages, the hospitalizations, the medications that made her thoughts go fuzzy. He asked her about the documents she'd signed, and Vivien explained each one carefully. The power of attorney Ethan told her was for household finances. The tax forms he said their accountant needed. The corporate filings he claimed were routine. Did you understand you were signing documents that created shell corporations? No, I trusted him. He'd hand me papers and tell me where to sign, and I'd sign because that's what wives do. That's what I thought love looked like. When did you first suspect something was wrong? About 2 years before we separated. I was looking at bank statements and noticed large transfers to companies I didn't recognize. When I asked Ethan about them, he told me I was being paranoid, that I didn't understand how business worked, that my medications were making me confused. Vivien's voice cracked slightly. So I stopped asking. Why? Because every time I questioned something, he'd tell me I was imagining things, that I was being irrational, that I needed to trust him. And after hearing that enough times, I started believing him. I started thinking maybe I was crazy. Maybe I couldn't tell the difference between real concerns and paranoid delusions. Marcus let that sit with the jury. Then he asked, "What changed?" "The second miscarriage." Vivien's hands tightened. "I lost the baby at 19 weeks. I woke up alone in the hospital because Ethan was in London on business. And I remember lying there thinking, this is my life. Losing children alone. Being told I'm too fragile to handle reality. Signing papers I don't understand. And I realized if I didn't leave, I was going to die. Maybe not physically, but the person I used to be was going to disappear completely. So you left." "I tried to, but leaving someone like Ethan isn't simple. He controls the money, the lawyers, the narrative. He'd spent years convincing everyone I was unstable. So when I finally worked up the courage to walk away, nobody believed I was making a rational choice. They thought I was having another breakdown." Marcus showed her the divorce papers Ethan had filed. "What did you think when you saw these?" "I thought he was lowballing me to punish me for leaving. $12,000 a month after 9 years of marriage. No assets in my name. No recourse if he decided to stop payments. It was designed to keep me dependent." Vivien looked at the jury. "But more than that, it was designed to make me feel worthless. Like I'd contributed nothing to the marriage and deserved nothing from its ending. Is that when you started gathering evidence?" "Yes." "Why?" Because I was tired of being erased. Tired of being told I was crazy. Tired of watching him destroy me while everyone applauded his restraint." Vivien's voice hardened. "I wanted proof. I wanted documentation that would show I wasn't imagining things, that the man I married wasn't who he pretended to be." Marcus walked her through the process. The downloaded files, the encrypted drives, the meetings with Adrian, the decision to hand everything over to Ingrid Halverson. "Did you know this would lead to federal charges?" "I hoped it would. I hoped someone with actual power would finally hold him accountable for what he'd done." "And did you do any of this for money? For revenge?" "No. I did it because staying silent would have killed me, and I was done dying quietly. Marcus smiled slightly. No further questions, Your Honor. Patricia Vance stood, and the real interrogation began. Mrs. Cole, you testified that you signed documents without understanding what they were. Is that correct? Yes. You have a graduate degree from Columbia. Is that correct? Yes. So you're an educated woman, capable of reading and comprehending complex documents. I'm capable of reading, but when someone you trust tells you a document is one thing, you don't automatically assume they're lying. But you did eventually assume Mr. Cole was lying, didn't you? After years of being proven right about my suspicions, yes. Vance picked up a document. This is a corporate filing for Apex Consulting Group dated March 2019. That's your signature at the bottom, is it not? Vivien looked at it. Her stomach twisted. It appears to be. So you did sign documents creating shell corporations. I signed what my husband told me to sign. I didn't know Apex Consulting Group was a shell corporation. He told me it was a legitimate consulting firm. But you benefited financially from that shell corporation, didn't you? Apex received over $2 million in state contracts between 2019 and 2023, money that funded your lifestyle. Money I never saw. Money that went into accounts I didn't have access to. But you lived in a $5 million townhouse. You wore designer clothes. You attended exclusive events. You benefited from wealth that came through companies like Apex. Vance's voice was sharp. So forgive me if I find it hard to believe you had no idea where that money came from. I knew the money came from my husband's business. I didn't know the business was illegal. Or you knew and you didn't care as long as you could maintain your lifestyle. Objection, Marcus said. Argumentative. Sustained, the judge said. But the damage was done. Vivien could see it in the jurors' faces, doubt creeping in, questions forming. Vance continued, Mrs. Cole, you testified that you were hospitalized twice for psychiatric evaluation. Is that correct? Yes. And during those hospitalizations, you were diagnosed with what conditions? Acute stress disorder, major depressive episode, adjustment disorder. Were you prescribed medication? Yes. What medication? Antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication, sleep aids. And did those medications have